Welcome everyone. Tonight we have a couple of things to do. The first is our annual budget hearing. I'm calling the budget hearing to order at 6 o'clock. I'm going to read some stuff because it is a formality. We're calling the, February 28th, 2018 Neshoba Regional School District School Committee public hearing to order at 6 o'clock. I'm going to read to you the the guardrails for the public hearing, and then we'll take public comment. Okay. Yep. There are no motions or votes until the hearing is officially concluded, which I don't think the school committee is prepared to vote tonight, but the purpose of the public hearing is to invite comments from members of the public regarding the proposed FY19 budget. So the only comments, during this portion are on the FY19 budget. The superintendent is going to be sharing several slides to give you an overview of where the budget currently stands. We are going to invite comments from the members of the public. I will hear the comments. We're going to do this similar to what we do with our public comment section in our regular meetings. So raise your hand, be recognized, let me know what your name is, what town you're from. The difference with this is if you have a question on the budget, you can ask it, and we will turn it over to the administration to answer it, which is different from our typical citizens' comment section. So that's good news. But I would like for you all to remember that we're still going to be adhering to our policies on the tone and the tenor and the type of questions, and we need it to be focused on the budget. In the regular meeting, we'll still have citizens' comments as well, so you can still comment on some of the other items on our agenda for that night. If we don't have the answers to your questions tonight, we will get you those answers. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Superintendent Clenchey to take us through where we are right now.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Chairman Roscoe. So just a couple of quick things. I know that many of you that are sitting in the room tonight have already watched this several times, so tonight is just the next iteration. At this point in time, at this juncture, I'm not going to go into the details because the details of tonight's iteration, which may or may not be the last iteration, are of course substantially different from our last meeting. Tonight we come forward with a different percentage. I'm going to put that up here in a minute. We took another $700,000 in reductions. So tonight,
in the ask.
Pardon?
Reductions in the ask.
Reductions in the ask. Thank you. Reductions in the ask.
Not cutting $700,000 from the FY18 budget. That's all.
It's the overall ask. That's absolutely right. So I'm going to go through those tonight and quickly explain where those reductions are. But that's not for this particular point in time. This particular point in time makes the assumption that anybody who is sitting in the audience tonight has already reviewed this, seen this, because it's already online. So from my perspective tonight, it's just a case of kind of revisiting a couple of things, and most people in here already know what I'm going to revisit, but I think it's important for me to kind of go through a couple of quick things. So we're going to take a quick look. The goal is the same as it always is, which is basically to offer the best educational value that we can within whatever the appropriate fiscal parameters are that the school committee deems to be appropriate for their communities, for our district, and balances all of that. And so I feel comfortable in presenting what I'm presenting tonight. So some key considerations that we need to keep in mind. The budget process is a long process for us. It starts at the administrative level the summer before. So our budget process for the administration started this last summer, and that's when we first started to go through. When you first started, Pat started her very first meetings with the principals. So this isn't something that lasts like just a month or 2 months. This is like a 6-month cycle that we go into. The difference is between last year and this year and this year and next year, Last year, we already had some things on the horizon for this year. This year, we already are looking ahead to 20. And so that really helps us out when we go into the next budget cycle, because we've already thought through a lot of things, worked a lot of things out. I feel this year that where we land, if we land where I'd like us to land, I'm going to feel very good about staffing. I will talk about one position that we're still toggling back and forth on, and why we're toggling on that one. But for the most part, it will kind of set the plateau for saying, you know what, I think we're staffed appropriately right now, unless we have a huge influx of students, for example, like in Lancaster or Bolton or Stowe, all of a sudden out of totally unexpected. That's the only thing that could kind of put a bit of a monkey wrench into it. But right now, I feel very comfortable. One of the things that we worked very hard to do is provide level services wherever we could. But at the K to 12, now you'll notice that pre-K is not in there, but at that K to 12 level, we worked very, very hard. Now keep in mind too, our job as a school district and as a superintendent is to always have that bigger picture in mind. So we have to look at things like the middle school Spanish program, or the elementary health program, or the electives at the high school, or what, and you would want us to, like, the school committee expects that the superintendent looks at all of that, because we value that whole piece of education in our community. So wherever we possibly could, we tried to make sure that we provided level services wherever possible. And I think for the most part, I think we did a really good job of that this year. So I'm very, very comfortable. So if your child's, maybe grade 5, whatever they would have gotten last year, they're basically going to get this year. So I feel very good about that. The contractual obligations, a budget like ours is generally about 80% just staffing. And it's not administrative. I think sometimes people think, oh, must be, that hierarchy. It's really not. It's the teachers. It's the teachers. It's the aides. It's the cafeteria folks. It's the food services. Whatever drives any of those. So the contractual obligations, want to keep in mind that we have 2 unions in place. And so that's kind of the first place we start, is looking at the contractual obligations for those 2 unions, and then we start to build around that. We have to. So I just want to kind of put that out there, because I think sometimes people forget that level of obligation and the amount of budget that takes up. So really your discretionary money is pretty minimal. And we've got a chart or two tonight that we're going to put up, so you can kind of see that a little bit. For us too, in talking with the principals, because we're all stakeholders in this in terms of the budget preparation, there were a couple of initiatives that we've started along the way, or that were started just before me or during my time, and the principals came in and said, we want to ensure that those continue. An example that I would give, but it would be the literacy. The elementary literacy initiative, that's something that's working very, very well. Our staff is doing great work in that area. It is ongoing professional development, and we're seeing benefits in the classroom. It would be foolish for us now to walk away from something that we see is in year 3 of 5 years that we see is making a positive impact in our classroom. So that was one of the initiatives that we said that has to stay in. So that's there. The other staffing recommendations, that's really where you get into other things like ELL support. Okay, so for English language learners, we have had an increase actually right across the district. But although we feel balanced with our staffing in Bolton right now, and we're okay with our staffing in Lancaster, we had to up our staffing at the high school, and we have to up our staffing at Hale. So right now, the only staffing piece that you'll see as an add is bumping a 0.6 to a full FTE, so there's a 0.4 in the budget for that. There are some other considerations for staffing that, again, we've gone around this table several times, so I know I'm probably saying things you already heard, so I apologize for that. But the other example is the SPED. I mean, one of the things that we have continuously worked away at in the last 2 years is trying to keep our kids on site. If there are kids, we're trying to build programs that we can keep our children here rather than sending them out of district wherever we can. And so we're just kind of chipping away at that. We put 2 programs into play last year, We've got another program that we're putting into play this year, this upcoming year in 19, and so there's an additional special educator in there in the mix as well. There's also an assistant principal that we feel strongly it needs to be in place at Luther Burbank, and there's also the assistant superintendent. I want to speak just for half a second about the assistant superintendent position. I think it's really important to keep in mind, sometimes I feel that position is being asked for as a new ask. It isn't a new ask. You've had an assistant superintendent for probably as long as you've been regionalized, but we didn't do it because we had other obligations in the last 2 years. This year, I'm just coming back and saying, can we please refill that position now? It's not a position that ever fell off the books. We just didn't fill that position. And so one of the things, and I know I said this last meeting too, is that we've had a retirement that we didn't anticipate in central office, and we're looking at taking that money and not filling it completely and putting some of that money over into the assistant superintendent position. So those are just some examples of it. It wasn't a large staff ask this year at all. So I feel very comfortable with where we're sitting and what's being presented tonight. There were a couple of positions that we came back with and said maybe we can do without. But the one that I said we're toggling back and forth on right now is the grade 1 position in Lancaster at Mary Rowlandson. It's one that we've got our eyes on, and I think I've shown in the year and a half, that a little more than a year and a half now that I've been here, that if we felt that there needed to be some additional staff in place, we have put it in place in my time here. So we're watching those numbers very, very closely at Mary Rowlandson right now. I know, for example, they had 2 additional students sign up the other day, register in at Mary Rowlandson for grade 1 starting next year, that are just moving into the community. So that's just one we're keeping an eye on. Right now it's not in the budget. If we need to go back and put it in the budget, then we'll do that. Over the page, just some quick, I guess, quick thank yous to everybody that's involved in our building this budget. This is not a one-woman or one-man show. This involves a lot of players along the way, and I'm so grateful for the support and the feedback, the input that we get pretty consistently during this process. So our school committee is terrific. Chairman Ramosko is amazing to work with. So that all helps to feed in and help to give us guidance on certain things. The district administration really is the group of people that take a look, because they're in the trenches and they know really what their buildings need. When Sean O'Shea comes and says, I'm willing to give up this because I need this table and chair so badly over here, then we have to listen to that, you know. The building is, almost 20 years old or whatever. Things, I mean, you've got little pumpkins running all over things, jumping on things, wiggling things. Sometimes they break. We need to make sure that they're, that they've got what they need in their classrooms. That's just an example, of course. But the district administration, just to give you a flavor, would have more than one meeting a week during this season. They might have as many as 4 or 5 meetings in a week just to deal with budget. Sometimes it's working with us. Sometimes it's working just with Pat or Pat's office. It could be any number of places, but the district administration is fully involved. Our principals and anyone who oversees the center. So whether that's Tom Poole, Laura Dwyer, Suchi, all of those are all players. Martina Kenyon, they're all players or components to building the budget. The last is the town administrators. And I just want to, again, acknowledge their support. We seek a lot of counsel from them, probably too much at times. I'm sure that there are times when they think, oh my gosh, I really didn't want to take her phone call right now. But they always do, and so I want to give a real shout out to our town administrators. We meet with some regularity, which I always enjoy those meetings. We talk through all kinds of stuff, but certainly come November, December, we're starting to focus on our budget. And so even through the budget process, I will call them intermittently and say, this is what I'm thinking, am I on track with this or not? And they always give great feedback. So special thanks to our town administrators for the level of involvement that you give us and the level of support. So the next page shows where we are landing tonight, and I'm hoping that there aren't a whole lot more changes. I hope that we've kind of hit the spot we needed to land in. The FY18 budget, you'll see, and I'm just going to go through this quickly. Basically, it was 52 million. The FY19 budget's 54 million. That is an increase of 3.91%. So that's a drastic differential between where we started on January 20th and where we've landed tonight. As I say, we all feel comfortable. The only place that we'll, and I'll just, if you can go to the next page, Alita, the only place that I find worrisome, and there's nothing I can do about that, is the Lancaster piece, because the Lancaster is sitting at a 5.76% increase. But I want to talk about that because you got to keep in mind that this is because it's the number of kids in the district that are their kids, that are Lancaster kids, and the assessment. And those things all come into play that are totally out of this table's control. So what this means right now moving forward, if this school committee, and I don't expect them to vote on the budget tonight because we have to have it voted on by March 15th, so we've still got some playtime to go back and do some tweaking or refining if the school committee so desires that. If we were to vote on it tonight, which we aren't, Bolton would be at 4.87% increase, Lancaster would be 5.76, Stowe would be at 4.21. So that's where we've landed effective this evening with our assessments. And of course, that's really the page that everybody always goes to before anything else. So we want to put that up there right away. If we just go to the final two slides, we've talked about this before in terms of our priorities, and I just want to quickly go through these. Safety I'd mentioned, and if you were watching our meetings, we've talked about, I thought we had a great session the other night with Lisa Gilbrecki was in here, certainly Chief Nelson was in here, and Joel Bates and Paul DiDomenico, and we were going through safety in our schools. Safety, we don't, when you have an incident like we did with in Florida, that's not when you start. You work on safety all year long. It's a continuum for us. So for example, last year in our budget, we set aside a certain amount of money just for assessments in our buildings. Now again, I know I'm telling you this and you already know this, so I apologize for repeating. That work actually had already started when the Florida incident had happened. And so every school, again, I know I'm repeating myself, but every school is receiving a full safety assessment. And then the team will come together when that's all done, take a look, prioritize, and again, adjust the budgets so that we can do what we need to do. So that work is going to be ongoing, so that continues to be a priority for us, and it probably will be for as long as I'm here. That will probably be one of the top priorities. The early literacy, I've already mentioned that. Just to let you know though that even though it's a K-5 focus, there's work that's being started on it at the middle school level and the high school level. It's just that it's not showing up anywhere in here, but it is happening. It's ongoing as a reflection of the work that's being done at that K-5 level. The science standards are brand new last year, and we are continuing to work on that. It's not something that you can do in a year because it means a change of curriculum and sometimes a change of, well, in our case it was a change of resources. So there are a lot of implications to that. That work needs to continue to be ongoing for our science teachers, everybody. That's, again, K-12 spectrum. Math, ongoing textbook and coursework implementation, and unit building. They're kind of at a different place than our science folks are, but that has to continue to have a focus as well. Social studies is just brand new, coming on stream right now. Thank you. You can see by all of this, although these are the key salient parts that we're looking at, that we would have to a continued focus on academic support district-wide. And of course, that's one of the reasons why I'm looking for that assistant superintendent as well, to spearhead that work and work with Martina and what this this could look like for us. And tying that in, by the way, with the digital literacy, which I'll speak to in a minute. The SOI, if there's follow-up on the SOI, we will have that ready to bring forward to our school committee. We were hoping for tonight, but I think it's going to be next Wednesday night. If there's follow-up, so for example, if we get queued up, then that work is going to have to continue as well. So we just want to put that as a priority. Facilities ongoing efforts like the leach field, that's not something we have a choice in. It's not like we can say, gee, I don't think we'll do the leach field. We don't have a choice. We're going to have to do that. So we've already said what we're doing right now, and hats off to Pat Maroney and her team, Rob Frieswick and such, who've been meeting with our department, the DEP. What we did in our budget was $50,000 is in there for the engineering, which we have to do, and we will put the remaining $250,000. We will work that into next year, so 20 is when that will have to be on tap. Social emotional learning initiatives are ongoing throughout the district, and we want to continue to focus there. Some of the newer priorities that we want to look at, I've alluded to this again a number of times. We want to look at reconfiguring that teaching and learning unit. We want to review and reconfigure how the support with digital learning ties into all of that. We want to put a focus on that. And again, that comes with the work that we see upcoming with that, particularly at the junior high school. And I alluded to this last meeting, junior high school and high school. I feel very comfortable with the elementary school right now. The review and reconfiguration, I've already alluded to that as well with regards to our safety committees. And again, remember that there's a safety committee in every building, and then there's an ad hoc safety and emergency task force that oversees the entire district. And those would be the priorities. So when we landed with the budget that I'm going to go into detail on tonight, these were the priorities that all of this was built on. So that's in a nutshell, as quickly as I could do it, where we sit at tonight.
Are you good?
I'm good.
So at this point, we'll take questions from the public. Questions, comments. You don't have to have a question. If you have a comment, you can let us know that. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Mr. Sir, could you give us your name and your town?
Don Lowe, Bolton Town Administrator. It's a comment, it's not a question, but since safety is one of the high priorities, we did have a safety discussion last week, and it's not on the agenda for later tonight, it's implied, but I just wanted to follow up on a comment I made last week that looking at lighting down at the high school, the original idea that was put out was to add a new pole down there and have a new light on the high school side. There's plenty of light on the commercial side, if you will, where the pizza is, which is the draw to most of the students and faculty crossing the street. And first of all, I want to make sure that it's clear that was not my idea. That was the chair of the school committee's idea. She reached out to me and let me know that, because I'm not down at the high school at night, so I don't know that it's dark on that side. I really don't, and I don't know that there's a lot of student traffic. So it was great that that idea was floated out. From that idea, I went down with the DPW director and we looked at the area. And another possibility that's been thrown out, well, let me just say the expense of doing a new pole, if that's what we ended up doing, is nowhere near as bad as I would have imagined. Actually, it's quite affordable. It might take a while to get National Grid to do it, but it's just a processing of the work order. But another option would be there's a pole right in front of Classic Pizza that already has a couple of things on it. It's got an arm, it's got a transformer, it's got a floodlight. But if we could put another arm on that and focus it across the street and shine that light there, at the high school where it looks like there was an old sidewalk or whatever, basically, we could accomplish something without having to put a pole up, if that's an option for National Grid. And another thing is that I'm looking at the feasibility of doing a streetlight conversion in town from traditional sodium vapor to LED. If we did that, or if we only just put in LEDs, say down there, at the same wattage, while it would actually create, I think, better visibility, because instead of the yellow light, you've got the white light, which illuminates the area better. What we don't want to do is, for anybody down there, create any light pollution or anything like that. But there are options that we can look at, and it would not be an expense to the district. They're lights that either we'll own or National Grid will continue to own. But we're looking at different options down there, and I just wanted to let the committee know that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. sir, your name and your
Yeah, I'm Don
town.
Marks, member of the Board of Selectmen in Stowe and liaison to the Neshoba District, which I've been pleased to do in finishing my second 3-year term. And I just want to comments and kudos to your board, your administration. The changes that I have seen sitting here intermittently as I do, and hearing where the rubber hits the road between now and when I started, just like night and day. You folks are dedicated, and the communication that Superintendent alluded to as appropriate, not through the individual selectmen, but through our town administrators. We hear reports from Bill Wrigley all the time. Oh yeah, Superintendent was in this week and we talked about something. And I just want to thank you, everybody, for cooperation. It's not realistic to think, as anybody might, running for office or whatever else, I'm going to cut the school budget, it's not realistic. The numbers that have been alluded to here tonight, as they say, if that's where you land, yeah, would we like to see 2% or something? Of course we would, but we are realists. We understand the real world, and it's not easy choices, I know, and especially when, as you point out, it's probably 80% of your budget is in personnel costs.
Yeah.
And I look at that bump in your health insurance cost, that 1.1 million, 14%. And that makes it even more impressive to keep the number and the overall assessment down. So I just wanted to say, job well done, keep it going. I hope this is very good. Thank you.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
acknowledgement.
That means a
Appreciate
lot, Don, thank you.
Yes, it does, especially this week. Okay, anyone else have any comments? Yes.
I have a question.
Can you tell us your name and your town?
Yes, Elaine Sanfilippo from Stowe. My question is about facilities. So the leach field is a good example, but I've heard Rob mention in a couple other meetings, like the boilers in one of the buildings and some other big physical expenses that at some point will have to be done because either the boiler will go and it'll flood the basement, or the state will come in, the DEP will say you have to do this leach field. These are major expenses, so I understand you pushed off some of the leach field expenses and they gave us a extension on that, but at some point these expenses will have to be paid and they're big hits to the budget. So what is the plan, either this year or maybe longer term, to either soften the hit of those expenses, or if push comes to shove, what are the things that will most likely get cut in order to make room for those things that just have to happen?
So that's a great question. I can start, maybe Pat, if you want to add in. This is one of the reasons why I appreciate the question, is because we talked about this, I want to say 2 meetings ago, about the notion that we probably need to set up almost a type of contingent account just for this kind of thing. And, you know, kind of disagreement around the table about what that should be called. But the bottom line is a lot of regional school districts are moving to that right now, so that the same thing, to your point, it would be like the field at the high school. That's another one, right? You know, the turf field, like we're going to have to think about that. And so I know that we've already had discussion about what does that look like and how do we start to build that account. And actually we've talked about that as well, Chairman Roscoe. Certainly that is our line of thinking right now, and I think that we absolutely need to be proactive on this so that we don't. Now, you can't stop everything from, you know, some accident out there from coming and doing whatever, and you're going to have to make it work, right? But I think, you know, the other thing I would say, I mean, I give the town of Bolton, for example, full credit. I mean, you know, with the boilers, that's really their system this year, that they, you know, when you've got, and it really ties in with what Don Hawk said earlier. I think because we have such good relationships with our communities right now, when we're going and asking them and we're saying to them in these meetings that we have, you need to know, like, we're really worried about this, we're really worried about that. So our town administrators already know. I mean, this is not a big example to use, but we had problems in Stowe in one of the schools with some tile, and we couldn't no way figure out what to do. We couldn't get anybody to guarantee the work. Right away, I went to Bill and said, Bill Wrigley, and said, we don't know what to do here. This is what we're thinking. because we've got that relationship with them, we were able to walk in that morning. Pat and I both went in, sat down, and said, "Can we problem solve this and figure something?" And we do, and it's fixed now. You know, so I think the same thing, like Don Lowe is excellent, for example, here in both. I know Orlando's not here, but he's also very good. But Don would say, you know, we know that you've got the boiler, and yeah, we're having problems with measuring this heat. So we already know we've got something in the background here that we better keep thinking about this, because that's another problem for us. So I would say a part of the secret sauce is making sure that you maintain really solid relationships with your town administrator so that everybody's on the same page and there are no surprises. That doesn't mean that you can't prevent all. And I think going to some type of a stabilization fund of some sort or another is paramount for us to be proactive. And then we can look at things like, for example, maybe it was a ticket sales come in, for example, on the turf field, maybe $1 per whatever goes into that. So those are the kinds of discussions that are happening right now behind the scenes, but we're not prepared to come forward right now with that.
And I'm going to add one quick thing. We're similarly, you know, we did a forensic audit about a year ago, and that was a critical component to getting our budget scrubbed and figuring out what's in it. We all believe that forensic audit needs to be a regular event, which will allow the district to stay away from some of the events that have happened in the past, even before our time with, what's it called? Why can't I think of the word? Receivership. So the district had problems several years ago, twice. So one of the things we've asked the administration to do is put about $10,000 into a line item every year, so that we don't have to get to the end of 3 to 5 years and say, oh my gosh, we need to do a forensic. Well, you know, we can't do it because we don't have the money. Because that has to be one of those things that just automatically happens. So similarly, it's, you know, what are those items that we know are going to cost a lot, and start funding it. And the rug for the field up at the high school is really expensive to replace, and that's a budget buster. So start to open up that account and start to fund a little bit at a time, just like you do at home with, you know, some people used to call them Christmas funds or something like that.
And to Chairman Ramosko's point too, I think it was really as a result of the, partially as a result of that forensic audit, that we started to take a look at doing some of these things. So I think that forensic audit paid dividends in so many ways. Great question.
Thank you. Any other questions? None? All right, school committee, because it's a public hearing, the school committee has an opportunity to make a statement or two. We obviously will get into our discussions later on. If anybody has any statements they want to make about the budget that are salient, feel free to do that. Otherwise, we're going to move on. Okay, so at this point, if there are no other comments from the public, I'm going to close the public hearing. Having heard all the comments, seeing no other board or public comments, the public hearing on February 28th, 2018 is now closed, and I will entertain a motion to close the public hearing. My understanding is that we need a roll call vote on this.
I move we close the public hearing on the budget.
Thank you. And a second, please.
Second.
Thank you, Mark. Roll call, Steve?
Yes.
And Mark?
Yes.
And I'm a yes, and Kathy?
Yes.
And Lynn?
Yep.
All right, thank you very much, appreciate that. Now I'm going to open the regular meeting, which 6:32. And our first order of business is citizens' comments. So if anybody, so this is kind of wild, but there are several items on the agenda that now if you have a comment or a question on, you could give it to us now, and if not, we'll move on. Any citizens' comments? No. Okay. The only updates I have, obviously, there's a lot going on with the budget. I'm going to let you do that one piece that I'm so excited about, because it's yours. And then school committee, we have 2 more meetings before our last meeting on the budget, which is March 14th, and our regional agreement says that we need to have a budget voted by March 15th, which means if there are additional considerations and modeling that we need to do, settle in, because we'll be here for the duration on that evening. Our next meeting is next Wednesday. That was an added meeting for those of you who may be looking at the calendar and it's not on the calendar that was voted several months ago, but that will be another one of our school committee meetings dedicated to the budget as well. And I think other than that, The only other question I have for the subcommittees is, and I think there's your policy, right? Is are everyone's minutes up to date?
We just had,
We just had PSC, I think, the minutes from the February, I can't remember, I was participating remotely, so we might be one behind.
No,
No?
you're good.
At budget?
You're good and policy's good.
Huh, okay.
there you go.
Yeah, that was a-
And budget is,
And-
how's budget?
Oh, that's what I just said.
Oh,
I think
budget.
I owe one for budget, but we're meeting next Wednesday. Are we meeting next Wednesday, Mark, again? We haven't.
I think that's the general plan.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
no,
we were gonna
can
wait and
have
see
it.
tonight,
So if
yeah.
we're one behind it, we'll be caught
Okay.
up by next week.
Well, that's a lot more encouraging than where things were last year, so thank you, appreciate that. I'm sure the public appreciates it too. Okay, I think that's it for my updates. I'm gonna turn it over to Superintendent Clenchey for her report.
Sure. So just a couple of really quick things here. I think we first of all want to give a shout out to Elspeth McDonald as one of our staff members in the high school. I just put a little note here. Our congratulations go out to Elspeth for being nominated as a Life Changer of the Year by one of her colleagues. We will formally recognize Elspeth likely at our next meeting. I believe we had a response saying that I think she'll be able to join us. I just want to read one little
Is that a
piece
state
here.
or national recognition?
I don't know.
National.
National, I think. Yeah, I think. I just want to read one little piece here, but I will certainly read more when she's here with us. It says, on occasion, Mrs. McDonald is unexpectedly called away, but this is because she's a counselor with a critical incident team, which assists first responders when they have had to deal with dramatic events in the course of their jobs. 16 years ago, she spent weeks helping first responders get through the ordeal of searching for survivors at Ground Zero. As far as I'm concerned, whether in the school setting or out, Elspeth McDonald is not only a life changer, she is a life saver, a true hero, the nominator said. No one could possibly be more deserving of this honor. So we're thrilled to recognize her at our next meeting. It's just so amazing when we get this kind of acknowledgement and recognition for our staff. We have such great staff. I mean, we got great kids, we got great staff. It's a great district. Speaking of students and voices, I'm going to read a little piece and then I want to speak to this. I've communicated with Principal DiDomenico, and I think, Isabel, you may even be reporting out on some of this tonight about the
Yes, I
student
will.
voice. Thanks. So I'm going to kind of do a tee up, and then I'm going to let you, during your time, talk a little bit more about it. So I've communicated with Principal DiDomenico regarding a student activity on March 14th. I think it's important for our students to have a voice, and I continue to support an appropriate event that allows that opportunity. I also believe that the event needs to place a focus on safety. I know that the high school is in the planning stages for an event, and they will continue to keep us apprised of what that looks like moving forward. Special thanks to everyone involved in the planning of this. I had reached out to Principal DiDomenico last Monday, and I would want to put out there that I just think it's critical for our students to be able to have a voice and have it heard. I think as I was walking into the building tonight and I was thinking about it, and I thought maybe in other districts I might not have felt as comfortable as I feel in this district. I am so proud of our students. I am so proud of our high school students. And I know that they were in a meeting this afternoon. I believe I'm meeting with a couple of them on Friday, taking a look at what this is. Principal DiDomenico connected with me about 3 hours ago and updated me on the work that you're doing. I had what I thought were good ideas. However, your idea surpassed mine, and it sounds like that's what you're going to do. And so I'm so thrilled with that. And so when it comes to your time, I'm anxious to hear from your lens where you see it moving to. So hats off to everyone. The only piece that I would say out there is that I feel very strongly that this does not become a politicized event. That's not what this is. This is about our students having a voice about safety. That's what this is about. So we want to make sure that we keep the politics out of it. When you go to talk about it, I think one of the things that we're probably looking at is student only. This is going to be during the student day. So this is not something that we're inviting people to, except for some special guests. And I'll let you again expand on that in a few minutes. So thanks to everyone involved in that. It's also students and staff coming together to do this collectively. The last point for me right now is communication overview. One of my goals, as you'll recall, for my the school year was communication, and it really kind of started out with the notion of communication between the schools and the families, and somehow it kind of grew into be much larger than that. I'm worried right now that it may be too large. We might want to rein it in a little bit, but so we have Jace Stewart is coming. Jace works for the Department of Elementary Secondary Education. He's coming in on Friday to talk to 2 focus groups and get that ball going. However, we've done a fair amount of homework for him already and passed that along to him. So that's happening this week. So special thanks to Jace for making time in his world to come and spend some time with us. And that's it for me for tonight.
Thank you. Isabel, we're dying to hear from you.
Okay, so I'll start with the exciting stuff then. Okay, so there was a discussion this afternoon at the high school involving students, faculty, and administrators on how students will be participating in the National Walkout Day planned for March 14th at 10 a.m. The discussions were productive and solid plans are starting to be set in place for the 14th. I know that students are feeling empowered and supported in their decisions and the planning. Incredibly supported members. We have principals, vice principals, teachers, support staff, guidance counselors, everyone's really coming together. The turnout was actually pretty remarkable. I had mentioned it to a few friends and it ended up being way larger than that, and some great ideas were approached. It is looking like there will be an actual physical walkout during the school day, so students will leave the building, plan to congregate on the turf, and stay out there for now the time line we're looking at is 17 minutes for the 17 victims, but that is up for, that's still not solidified yet. Students are also interested in having a voter registration table at the school, as seniors can register to vote when you're 17 in Massachusetts. I'm registered to vote. I'll be 18 on Friday, so very exciting. And also means I can vote in my town election, so that's great, right? And we're also looking to do a panel with chief of police, state representatives, getting in touch with a lot of members of our community to discuss our safety in our schools. A lot of students are really just passionate, and a lot of teachers are passionate. The point we're trying to make is everyone should be safe going to school. And as Superintendent Clenchey has said before, that's the #1 priority whenever you put kids in a building to learn is, are they safe? So I think that that is definitely the unified vision and the unified idea when it comes to what the students are looking towards. It's not going to be it's not going to be a political event. It's more about speaking out and saying every student in America and worldwide should be able to go to school and not have to worry about their safety, and leaving it there. I know that a lot of students have been outspoken, considering that almost every student in our building was indeed born after Columbine. So it's been definitely something that's been going on our entire lives, and something that we're trying to say, you know what, we've been the ones in school for this, listen to us, listen to what we're saying, and we're very inspired by the survivors of Parkland and the survivors of every other school incidents caused by gun violence and or school violence. So I think it was very productive, and since there will be a meeting next week, I'll be able to touch on it before the actual day, and the meeting after that will be after it's occurred, and I can go into a little bit more in depth. Right now there's going to be assemblies organized for those kind of town hall discussions with those members of the community. We'll have small groups dividing it up by freshmen and sophomores one time, juniors and seniors at another, really get a sense of community and the school coming together, which is I think what everyone's going for. So very successful on that front. Now sports. The wrestling team placed 3rd overall at the MIA All-State Tournament last weekend, and Lucas Cordio won the All-State title at his 160-pound weight class, and we have 3 wrestling competitors at the New England tournament this Friday and Saturday. The girls basketball team defeated Grafton last night and have advanced to the quarterfinals, which will take place in Ashland on Friday. And spring sports begin in 3 weeks, so excitement growing there. Today, the high school jazz bands are competing in the Massachusetts Association of Jazz Educators competition at Nipmuc High School. And later this month, our high school will be presenting The King and I, March 16th through the 18th. The high school will also be presenting 2 concerts on March 20th and 22nd, and then competing in the Massachusetts Instrumental and Choral Conductors Association competition March 23rd in Hopkinton and March 25th in Westboro. Lastly, this month we'll be holding the 2nd annual Neshoba District Jazz Night. This will be the first time in which all of the jazz bands in the district will be performing together at the high school, and it will take place on March 28th.
Great report out, thank you.
Isn't she an example of why
Yeah.
we are so proud of our school district? Thank you, Isabel.
Yeah, thanks, Isabel. Bring some more stories. Oh, all right, now we get into the more meaty part of the evening with our interim business and operations manager report. Pat Maroney will have her come forward and talk to us about where the FY18 budget is, some thoughts on FY19, and the results of a request to review employee insurance.
And for that, I'm going to ask
Yeah.
Anne Marie Storey to come up.
Sure.
So, can you bring up the fiscal year 18? That's- So, you have before you results of operation for January. As you can see, we're holding steady. I've projected that everybody will spend their budget in each one of the locations. We are not in any situation where we're projecting a deficit. I'm hoping that perhaps we have a little bit more at the end of the year, but at this point right now, this is what I can confidently say is available in the budget right now. So, does anybody have any questions about any particular area?
Anyone?
Sure. Can you comment a little bit on the special education line and how it's shaping up for the year?
The special education line, that line is obviously driven by out-of-district tuition. Seeing that it right now has a $292,000 surplus, that would be tuitions, most of that would be tuitions. And I feel comfortable in saying that amount of money would be available. There could possibly be a little bit more.
And again, keep in mind that we are working diligently to bring our kids back.
Right.
Great. Any other questions? Nope.
Substitute teachers. So we have a surplus left over for substitute teachers. So how is the ASOP working, and are we getting more substitutes, or we're just not?
That's probably an Anne Marie question.
That's an Anne Marie question. Anne Marie, do you want to?
Bring her up to the table.
Can't say that I fully heard it. It was a question about how's ASOP going?
Yes.
Is that the gist of it?
Well, we have a surplus, and I'm just wondering, is ASOP working, and are we able to fill the classrooms with a substitute teacher?
ASOP is working especially well for planned absences that people, I need to take next Wednesday off because of personal day for whatever.
Right.
It's working also well, but not as well as we would like for the morning of. Woke up not feeling well. And actually, we've been having conversations about this just this week. I think part of the reason is that when substitutes sign up to become substitutes, they have the option at that time of saying, I only want to be, I don't want to be called on the morning up. I don't want to get any phone calls. I just want to be able to sign up in advance. So that we're finding that a large number of our substitutes don't want to do that. So then it falls upon the secretaries and administrative assistants in the schools to get on the phone that morning, and that's not the way it's supposed to work. It's supposed to be much smoother than that. So we're trying to figure out a way that we can, get that to work a little bit better. As far as what the fill rate is right now, I can get that to you if you want. I don't know that off the top of my head.
I'd like to know if it's getting better, percentage-wise.
Yeah, I can find that out.
Okay.
I don't want to guess.
And this amount that I am showing in surplus in that line is representative of the long-term subline, more so because
The
in this-
daily.
Right.
What's the where would that show up?
Well, there are two lines. There's regular daily substitutes, and then there's a long-term subline. And the long-term subline is for when we have people out on maternity leaves and things like that. And as I said, this is as of the end of January. Things could change.
Things could change
just like
still.
that.
So I wouldn't hold a lot of stock of that 45,000 right now.
Right, but at the end of January, that was.
Well, it was actually the fact that you had a surplus was making me think that it was working really well. So I just-
Well, I project out the expenditures based on the previous year's number of substitutes.
Yep.
And I also look at, you know, what the average number of substitutes that we've used to date.
Okay.
So,
The insurance and benefits, the 95, what is that representative of?
that would be representative of where we are with several lines. There's a little bit maybe in health insurance right now. There's a little bit more in the insurance for the buildings and so.
Yeah, I wouldn't see that as just health insurance, if that's what you're
That's
thinking. I think it's
insurance.
a little bit more. And don't forget too, what also sometimes is reflected in there, we don't necessarily know who is going to come forward and need insurance in the middle of the year because of whatever situation they might find themselves in. And so we always have to take that into account too when we're budgeting to make sure that, because we're going to have to provide them by contract.
Right.
So those are always things. So we kind of should have a little bit of stuff over there right now because we don't know. I mean, for example, we've had to have a couple of new hires in the last couple of weeks. If every one of those people come forward and say, I need health insurance, then that has to be taken into account too.
Right.
So we want that over there right now.
Right. And like I said, that's as of the end of January. Another month has happened and things could be different.
Okay, all right. Any other questions, folks? No? Okay.
So now we're going to start on to the next budget component. So Alita, I'll have you go into my work there, my sheets, please. So this was a sheet that I had put up there before, so there's nothing new because you were all here during the public hearing, so there's no surprise there. That's what we put up there. If you take a look at this, maybe Pat, just do a quick, and Steve, this really is in response to one of your questions last time. And so Pat had pulled this together and said, let's just take a look. When we do budgeting, we don't just look at the raw data and go through it like that. We pull together all kinds of different scenarios, and we're going to show you this tonight, and we're going to show you something else, just to kind of give you a flavor of the ways that we look at the numbers, because it's not just about raw data. So this was one thing we were talking about and said, okay, what do we have to do in order to run the school district, and how does that separate itself out from other non-salary requests? Mm-hmm. So Pat, just talk us through very quickly this particular sheet, because I know your office put this together.
Right. So basically, like she alluded, that we went through all of the lines, and this is the budget driver page from our regular budget. But what I did was I moved everything around and I grouped like things together. And the top list is everything that's a contractual or a fixed expenditure. And basically that would be saying that these are things that we have to do because of a contract, or in the case of like facilities and utilities and insurance and benefits, those are things that we have to cover.
Heat, telephone, gas, propane.
All the assessments from the state are in there, any debt service, transportation, our obligations for transportation for sped and regular day. They would all be part of our fixed obligations. And in looking at that, that represents 97% of our budget, our increase in our budget. And then the other things, we have our new personnel, special education without transportation. Those would be the other lines. There may, that would be the supply and some other services that we have in there. And then the other system-wide operating expenses would be, I would say, things within our budget, our administrative budget, that are, there could be some discretionary things in that area. But that, again, a lot of them have reductions. And the site-based and department funds would be all of our departments, whether it be teaching and learning or the schools. This would be what their asks are. And as you can see, for the site-based departments, they actually ask for less this time for those, in those particular lines, and that's minus 1.62%. But the total area together represents 2.99% of the budget. So this would be the area that if we were to make cuts, we would have to go there first. And as you can see, we've already kept that at a minimum.
So that, I didn't want to spend a lot of time on that. It was just another way of looking at it. And please feel free to go back now to our school committee. Feel free to go back, take a look at things, and then if you've got questions, reach out to Chairman Ramosko, and we're happy to answer them. So now I want to move to the executive summary. There are a couple of things in the executive summary here that I just want to touch base on. Again, some of this you've already seen, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. There are two buckets, if you will, of reductions to the ask that I would want to allude to. One is about $260,000. These are positions that we've already caught wind will be able to reduce. But we're not prepared at this point in time to say what they are, other than we have knowledge that we're going to be able to make those reductions. They're all bodies, they're all people. Then, and you'll see that in here, and what we did with that was we just, because we weren't sure exactly how to show it, we dispersed it across and I'll point it out in a minute. You'll see 45,000 cut consistently in all of the buildings, and when you add it all up, it's around that 260,000 mark is what it's going to add up to. Then we also have, and I'll show that here in a little bit too, another around 260,000. These are identified cuts, but we are not in a position tonight to say what they are for a number of reasons. So it's two totally different buckets of reductions. But just want to put that out there. But you'll see that 45,000 come through in every one of those schools, so that's what that represents. Last time, I believe the 144 and the 11 were already there, the 11,000, so I think you've already seen this. This 50,000, again, this is part of the retirement that happened in the teaching and learning, and we brought it back in to help offset the assistant superintendent position. These are the unspecified, or the unidentified, unspecified cuts that I was talking about, is 209,000 there. The OPEB is the one that we would want to note because that is a change from last time, so I just want to put that out on the table. What we did was last time we were together, we had 100,000 in there, and this time what we're doing is taking 50,000 away. Now you'll recall that there's 13,000 here that's budgetary, but then there's an additional 37,000 that Pat had spoken to about last meeting. So it would still mean that we would be putting a total of 50,000 into the OPEB line, but it's only 13,000 of it is being requested through regular budgeting. How do you scroll down? I'm going to go through it all, and then feel free to come back and ask questions, but let me get through all of it quickly. Whoops. Oh, that's just the same 50,000. That's just the add the total. Going down a little bit, Alita, please. Yeah, so there's all zeros, so we won't. Well, there we go. These again are the amounts from the, again, these are not new amounts. You saw these all last time. This is the facilities where we went back and cut off $100,000 from the facilities line. So that's what that is. This is the Leachfield and the DEP compliance component that we made some of the change to there, but remember that we left enough money in there to handle our engineering. It's just that other component that we put off to 20. Going down, the teaching and learning, this is that other piece of the salary, that retirement, and that we left that piece still here, and then that's just the total. I'm sure for some of you this is really boring, I'm sorry about that. This position is not ringing the bell. I can't remember exactly what that 57,000, is that a student that's coming back into the district, the 57,000 for that?
I think that's what you said this morning.
I was going to say, yeah, I think that's a return student is what that is. And here's the out-of-district student too. Okay, going down. This is new. So Pat, can you explain that 69,000, please?
That is, this just came to light actually the other day. That's our contract with Comcast for our internet. That's our internet provider. And actually, there's a reduction in costs there because it's much more competitive than it has been in the past. And they want us as a customer, so she negotiated this and came up with a reduction of an additional 69,000. So
This you saw last time, so this is not new, these two numbers. And that's just the ad. You've seen all of these numbers as well. These are all zeros. Lots of zeros. This is a position that the individual was at the high school. He's going over to Lancaster, and we will not be backfilling at the high school. So that's a savings of that amount of money. So that's why that position is there. This, again, this is not new. We had talked to you guys, talked to all of you before about this. There was an IT line that we felt was almost a duplication of another line in the IT department. And so what we did was we went back, and you'll see that we still left some money in that line for the schools, but not the total, because the schools can still make their purchases through their IT component and the IT budget. So that's nothing new, but just remember that you're going to see those numbers come up consistently in each of the buildings as well. And then there's the zeros. Here's where you'll see that $45,000 I was talking about. That's $260,000 that we dispersed across all of the, and as soon as we're able to start to show that, then we'll make the necessary changes, and you'll see that. This piece here, we talked about that last time, but I want to go back, and there's the next 45,000. So you'll see that 45,000 come up over and over again. This is the assistant principal position, because what we had realized is, and I had said this again, I apologize for reiterating, but we will be able to fill, we feel that we have the talent within the district to fill that position, the AP at Burbank. And so with doing that, the way that we have orchestrated would be that there would be another cut in a different building to help offset that. And so that's what that 92,000 represents. And then of course there's the 45,000. Here's that IT line again with the 5,000. The smaller schools had around that $5,000 to $7,000 mark. So the elementary schools, basically middle schools, got 2,500. The high school was the one that got the larger amount on that line. So you'll see those regular cuts. This was a position that I believe that's a science position that I think that we reduced, if I'm not mistaken on that. Maybe Pat, just go back and take a look at that position. I think that was a position that Ross said he didn't need at Center School. That's why that's there anyway. It was a position that we had thought was going to be needed, and then we pulled it out. Here's that IT line again for the 6,500. There's another of that 45,000. There's that IT line again. Rollinson, there are two positions in there. Pat, is that correct? And that 45, is that 45,000?
Yeah, the 45,000 is part of that.
Right.
And then there's the first grade teacher.
The first grade teacher. And that's the one that I'm saying we're still toggling on that one depending on the number. So we'll keep a close eye on the numbers. But right now it's back in there. But we may have to go back out and do something different. Here again is the IT line. That's just the ad. There's the 45,000 again. And that's just a total. And that's it. Yeah. So I know it was quite, but I think by now you probably feel that you know the budget inside out. So if you've got other questions, I'm happy to answer them.
So why don't, can we do it this way? Can we take topics on the budget? That way we know. So what areas of the budget do you want to ask questions
Well,
on?
I have a question on the English teacher in the high school.
Okay.
The minus.
Wait 1 second, I just want to make sure that, so we can manage the discussion. Do you have things you want to touch base on?
I kind of do, but they're not directly related to this. They are budgetary, but if people want to talk about what was presented first, I'll wait.
And Lynn, do you have anything in particular on the budget?
Just what I sent you, but this is stuff that you want to send anyways, and you answered a few of them.
Okay, so,
Especially with the leaching field.
so the English teacher, I don't know, Lynn, if you've got a mixed bag, at least give me some subjects so we can.
Or did you feel comfortable with the answers that you got, and then you're just going to come back for others, other clarification on that? Because that was pretty deep in the weeds.
Well, no, actually, like, I caught the leaching field, the inspection. Looks like initially you had the whole thing in there, and you
Mhm.
took it out, so that made sense.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so hold on 1 second, I'm sorry, I just want to know topics. So, English teacher, OPEB, and
Well, OPEB, where's, if you only put 13,000 in, where's the rest of the money?
what are the topics other than English teacher and OPEB? That's all I want to know right now, because Steve's got the floor as soon as I
Oh, I'm
find out
sorry,
what your
Steve.
topics are.
But you know my
Then I'm
topics
fine.
are?
Yes.
Okay. Did you tell your topics?
Mine
Am I speaking
are-
English?
I missed that, I'm sorry.
I was just
Technology and security.
Awesome, thanks.
Mine are E&D and foundation budget.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you. Steve, go ahead.
Okay. The $90,000 for the English teacher that said was no longer in the high school, he was transferring to somewhere else?
Right, Lancaster.
And where does that show up in the Lancaster school budget, the additional $90,000?
It doesn't because it's a wash. That person is still on target, but,
Somebody left.
right, it's a vacancy. He
position.
filled a vacancy.
Somebody at the $90,000 level left
Right,
Lancaster, okay.
right. So it's,
Okay, that's enough.
no, there's no new addition there.
And now let me ask about OPEB.
Okay.
Okay.
Where's, first of all, I'm of the opinion, and have been, that we've been contributing far too little to OPEB. Someday, the bear in the room is gonna come and bite us. And I really, I understand that it's an easy thing to cut because it's,
'Cause it's
no one's
future.
collecting OPEB
Right.
today. But we've got to build that up over the next 20 years, and we have to make a commitment to do that kind of thing. What happened to the other $50,000?
Well, I think it was removed, but I think the question is not to.
Where is it coming from?
I don't think the question is to Superintendent Clenchey. I think it's to the rest of the committee as far as what does the committee think and what does the committee want to do, because I'd like to restore it to the
They're showing-
100,000 as well.
The administration is showing a budget cut of $50,000 in
Right.
the OPEB line. Does that really mean you're only going to put in $13,000?
No,
in the next
last
budget
meeting, we
year?
explained this very thoroughly with the 37,000. Yeah. So let us explain it again.
37,000 is going to come from, there was a point where the state was mandating that a liability for retirees' health insurance, that different towns would be paying each other for what the liability was of somebody that would retire from their district. So let me just step back a bit here.
It's such,
It's
that's
very
so
confusing.
complicated, yeah.
If somebody worked for this district and retired from this district, but they worked so many years in another district, then what was happening is they wanted to have people recoup some of the cost of supplying health insurance benefits to these people that only worked a very small amount of time in their district. So we would get a check, say, from Leominster, okay, for that person's health insurance.
So we would pay a portion, and Leominster, wherever they
Right.
worked before, would
So
pay a portion.
we had all this money from different districts. Well, the state just scrapped it, the whole program. So we have this money sitting there.
So we have an amount of money sitting,
Right, that we're going to use this year for the OPEB.
but
It's going to wonder.
So it's
But it's-
37,000.
this,
What was it tagged as?
I've been with this now for a couple of weeks or a couple of months on this budget, and we just don't seem to be doing it the way normal businesses do things. Changing from one budget projection to another budget projection and showing that as either an increase or a decrease, to me, that's unimportant. What's important to me is this line last year, this line this year. What's the difference percentage in these lines, and let's explain those variances, whether it's a positive or a negative
I
variance.
believe we did that already.
You know,
Okay, so maybe the
what I'm saying
question,
is part of these columns are, to me, are in there, from my point of view, obfuscating the issue, okay? And I think what the only real comparison on a budget is we spent $100,000 last year for OPEB. We're spending $50,000 this year for OPEB. That is a minus $50,000 year-to-year budget. That's really what we're talking about, isn't it?
so I'm gonna ask you to stop
Not
for
the
a
ask
second.
in
Steve,
one
stop for
period
a
and the ask
second.
in
Why don't
another
we
period.
focus on where we want to fund OPEB? Because I think that's probably the bigger question, is where do we want to fund OPEB for the FY19 budget?
Well, from my point of view, OPEB is just one of the issues.
Okay, but we're talking about OPEB now, so where do you want to fund OPEB for FY19?
You mean the dollar amount?
Yeah.
You got 20 years, you gotta build up $20 million. Putting in $50,000 a year is not gonna cut the mustard.
So where do you want to fund OPEB for FY19?
A minimum of $100,000.
Okay. Mark, how do you feel about that?
I prefer to have a slightly increasing and modestly increasing amount every year, so that in future years we have a significant annual amount that we're paying. And along those lines, I would prefer to aim for 100.
Okay, thank you. Lynn?
I actually liked how we started by using the money at the end of the year. And I know how important it is because you don't always have money at the end of the year. So I'm comfortable with the 50, but when we're all done and there's leftover money, I'd like to discuss, okay, now what do we do with it? And does it go into E&D or does it go into OPEB? But I'd like okay, it's just 50, 50 is a definite, but if we have anything left over, we'll funnel that into it. Because we might have 100, we might have 200.
Kathy?
If any additions are made to this budget, for example, if we add 50,000 for OPEB, then $50,000 has to be cut. I'm not going to, I cannot support going over the current bottom line. I'd like to see us inch a little further away from a 4% increase, and I have a suggestion for that. But I think when we were presented with information that Pat put together from the state about where people were with their OPEB funding, it's all over the place. And I'm more concerned right now, and maybe it's foolishness on my part, about maintaining the direction we're going in with curriculum and instruction and assessment, and the gains that we've made with staffing and looking at things to help improve the fees and some of the decisions we made about that. So I'm comfortable keeping it at 50. If the committee decides to add another 50, then then I would only agree to that if 50 were cut. Bottom line stays the same
So we've got,
or goes down.
so I'm not gonna pile on here, but I'm leaning more towards, we have a significant future liability. It's an actuarial assessment, so it does shift and it does change, but the reality is, it's not gonna be $1 million. And healthcare insurance is going up, and retiree, and folks are living longer, so reality check. I'm more comfortable with the $100,000, but I like Lynn's perspective because we've been there before. What I don't know, and this is a question for you, is back then when this first happened and we said take that 150 and throw it into an account for OPEB, we were in a different cycle with E&D at that point. We were in a much different cycle, and it was kind of in and out and in and out, and now we are stopping that cycle and living within our means. So the question I have for you is, what does E&D look like at this point? I know you can't read, the future, but what would the potential be for there to be some their excess in that, especially in that insurance line? Because to me, if there's any money at all, even $10 in the insurance line at the end of the year, it should automatically go to retiree health. So do you have any perspective on?
Well, like I said, that 95,000 that I'm looking at right now, that's also spread across all the different accounts. That's our liability insurance, that's our unemployment insurance, the cost of unemployment. So it's not 50,000. I do not project that it would be 50,000 at this point.
You don't. So, okay, well then, good news, bad news, you're getting off the hamster wheel, right? The E&D hamster wheel.
We're trying really hard.
Right, but
we
then.
are trying, we're not going back. That was one of the things that we tried we were very concerned about, increasing to $1 million.
So sitting through negotiations with our union folks, those conversations they're about people's livelihood, right? We're talking about the most personal thing, which other than their children is their money.
Right.
And I feel a huge sense of responsibility that we are responsible for funding that retiree health. And so, as uncomfortable as it is, I'm more in line with the 100,000 because that nut is huge, and we can do 50, but it's not going to be enough. I don't know if we say, 100,000 and then it's offset at the end of the year if there's any bit in insurance so that it's not really the full 50, but we won't know that for a while. So I think we all need to kind of come to a consensus on how that's going to work. Do you have any input?
You mean like a plan moving forward?
Mm-hmm.
Like what do we do with, do we pick those health insurance lines in the budget and decide if we have any surplus in that, then that's what we look to fund OPEB from?
Yeah, but I think
put a certain amount in and then have any addition?
Yeah, I think we should, but I also think, to Mark's point, we need a thoughtful plan. We need a commitment. We need a commitment because it's not going to go away. And we make a commitment to uphold our contractual agreements with salaries and with our health insurance for active employees. But we have a huge commitment that's almost as big as our budget with our retiree health. And
I think people don't realize that.
Right? So that's what makes me uncomfortable. So I'm with you guys, and I don't want to see this number go up because it makes my heart palpitate. But the reality is, getting back to the Elaine's comment, we know that there's some big expenses coming, so why do we want to wait until, it's here, and this one we're already aware of? So that's my 2 cents. We need to make a decision on it, but it's something that we have to resolve. And we could revisit this next week when our other 3 members are back, and maybe that's what we do. But we need to make a decision on it.
Yeah, we need direction. We need to know what you want us to do.
Okay, so we'll put that back on the agenda. Well, I'll put that as a
Yeah.
line item. Hold me to it. Okay. All right, so security. Lynn, you mentioned security.
Yeah. And mostly because it's my background, but basically, it's back to the same thing. Is there a plan to get the assessment of what's existing so we can actually move forward?
Yeah, we brought that up last week meeting as well at length, and yes, we've got organizations that are coming in to do a full-scale assessment, and we budgeted that last year.
Right.
I brought that up earlier tonight,
in
yeah.
this fiscal year, we budgeted money.
Very
So they-
specifically for that, Lynn.
Yeah. Because I'm just uncomfortable moving forward with anything without actually knowing what we have existing.
It won't be wrapped up though in time. Like it won't be wrapped up before our
In 2
budget
weeks.
is going forward. Yeah, because they're just going around doing walkthroughs now.
So when do you think you'll have that?
Oh, I have no idea. I mean, it's not going to be June or something like that, but I don't know if we've got a timeline.
Probably a few weeks,
I was gonna say probably April. March,
Yeah, April, yeah.
Well, that went out as an RFP or something, or, I mean, they must have given you a time frame, right?
No.
Well, there's actually 3 that we're looking at, so we haven't
Oh, I see.
decided which one we
Gotcha.
want to use, so.
Okay.
And basically what I did was I put some money in the budget because my thoughts are, I want to look at the entire district, have some kind of a plan in place, and then I don't want to just throw money at, you know, cameras and, you know, new doorways in the schools and everything. I want to have something that's more thoughtful and that they could be capital items. You know, they could be things that we want to go to the towns for. If it's, you know, reconfiguring the front door of a school or something like that. So I just want to have a thoughtful plan in place. And I put the 50,000 in there because that at least could start us off. And if maybe we had some other savings in facilities during the year, maybe then we could spend a little bit more. We'll just have to evaluate it.
So Lynn, just so you know too, like, I mean, the assessment piece has been going on, but we've also been working tightly with our police departments as well on all of this. So I'm not at liberty to say anything more, but just to let you know.
So did the RFP, was it just for the assessment, or was it for the assessment and then recommendations?
It's for the assessment and recommendations.
E&D.
Just I wanted to know where we were with E&D.
I don't have certified E&D yet. I can tell you that the auditors, they worked through the process with me, and it looks like it's going to be somewhere about 1.4 million.
4 million.
Somewhere in that vicinity.
And we were at 1.7 at this
We
point
thought
last year?
1.7, but in retrospect, when I went through the whole process with the auditors, they said, no, this is where it is.
And they can probably explain that a little bit because
Yeah.
that's where there was some bus money that was in there, and that was the differential. So
Right.
it wasn't like we just went from here to here. It was how we had to classify.
How we have to
Identify.
classify something and how they would certify that.
And in the past, has some E&D been used to offset the budget?
Always.
Always. Is there a plan to utilize that for this year?
We have just a portion because we're trying to get off of that wagon wheel.
Any,
Yeah.
a ballpark? Of
800 is what we've got in there right now, sitting for next
For
year.
keepsies, and then the rest would go to offset the budget, is that what you're saying?
No, 800 to offset the budget. The remaining would stay in
Okay, I
E&D.
see. All right. So, and that's not in this yet?
Yes, that's already in play. It's
Where you?
If you
That
go to
would leave
section
us-
1 of your
Yeah, no, I
binder,
just-
it's
just
the
Just the
last
revenue.
page.
Yeah,
It's
oh, it's in the
it's in the
revenue, so
revenue
that's-
section.
that's
in the revenue
Yeah,
section.
that's, it's accounted for,
All right,
yes.
thank you.
Yeah.
And how much did we start this year with?
Plan is to bring it to fiscal year.
No, but that was,
E&D.
that was a ballpark that we were starting at, about 1.5 is I think right where we started
Yeah.
with. That's where we thought it was gonna be.
Yeah, I thought somewhere between 1.5 and 1.7, and then when, after going through the audit and discussing the way things should be aligned, it came out at 1.4.
Keep in mind, this is a new auditor that we're using this year, which is the same auditor that did the forensic audit, and this is another one of those places that we are realigning.
And we're, you know, looking to them for guidance.
Yes.
Make sure that it's done properly, and
So are we starting 2018-19 with the same amount in E&D, or less?
we have,
You've
Am I
always
looking at it
taken
right?
that million, you've always taken $1 million or $1 million more.
Yes.
Sometimes I think it's as much as 1.4 million and turn it over. We're not doing that. We're trying to get away from that as per the forensic audit. So that's why we've only got the 800,000 in there. But you've always had that same, about that same amount of money, Lynn, in there. To start with, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if at the beginning of the year, do we always have almost the same? I know that we brought it down to lower the budget, and then are we going to be starting with E&D less than we did this year? Yes.
yes.
But not, yeah, but it's not like $1 million less or anything like
Right,
that.
it's
But
just
yeah,
minus the 800,000. Okay.
which again is what you've done consistently,
No, I get that,
yeah.
but it always gets put back in again.
Right, and that's exactly what we did.
But I think what they're doing is they're not funding up to the full level that they were funding the year before, so they're taking a
Right.
little bit less, so
Okay.
a little bit less goes back in,
That's exactly
So
right.
which is bringing the numbers down.
So is there a number that we want to keep E&D at?
Well, I think Budget and Warrant has been having those ongoing discussions. I think that the school committee, Chairman Roscoe, just correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you were looking at some point in time to have Budget and Warrant come back with a recommendation on that.
Yeah, there's a few things budget and warrant. Once the budget's done, budget and warrant needs to come back to us with, and that is one of them, was a recommendation for E&D, right? I mean, E&D and
Well, they did the
OPEB.
and they did the stabilization as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, the foundation budget.
So on the preliminary budget assessment sheet, on the right corner, the minimum local contribution, is that the
Yeah, that's,
the foundation budget?
Yes, it is.
And that is for, those are FY 18 numbers?
H1 numbers, F1 numbers.
Okay, do we have the FY 19 numbers? Or is that what we base the
We wouldn't
budget
have
on?
them.
we don't have them until almost July. Like we get the House 1 numbers, but then it goes through its process. And so the numbers aren't solidified until generally around June or July, which is why we use the FY 18 numbers.
Okay, but I think I recall you saying that Lancaster's minimum contribution had gone up
Yes,
from FY 17 to 18?
yes.
And so if I'd be interested in, seeing the FY 17 numbers and the 18 numbers for all three towns, just.
Okay,
as a
yeah,
point
from
of
last
reference.
year.
That's pretty
Yes,
easy for us to
okay.
do. Yeah.
Thank you.
And Lynn, I have two more. One is Lynn's tech.
Yeah. And it's pretty much the same question as security. Are we going to have a plan to move forward, or are we just going to keep building up what we have?
Well, this is, I did a.
I wasn't here last week.
Oh, sorry. I was
And
trying to
I
think, was it last week?
was-
Losing track of my meetings, thinking, which meeting was that at? When I talked about digital learning, and I think, was that last meeting? I think it was?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And so at that point in time, that's when I had spoken about the fact that, I feel really comfortable with where we're at, and having a lot of discussion with our principals on this. I don't have my notes. Actually, maybe, Alita, do you have access to my notes there from the digital learning presentation from last? Like, you should be able to go to the last meeting and pull it up quickly.
It's in the packet, is it?
Okay. So,
Good on you.
It's online.
So I'm comfortable with just a quick snapshot. I'm really comfortable with where the work that we're doing at the elementary level. My concern right now is the junior and high school, and I'm concerned that that our digital learning I don't think we're maximizing where we can be right now. So we want to take a very different approach next year. I'm not at a point in time where I'm ready to bring that forward, but I'm going to be looking at a very different approach. Part of that approach is exactly what you're talking about. We need to create almost like a digital learning plan of what this is going to look like. Like I said, I'm not uncomfortable with the elementary. It's more the middle and high school that I want to look at.
I'm actually more worried about the operational side of it from not the teaching and learning side, but the other side. So basically, your wide area network, your local area network, and all of your hardware that you're purchasing. So right now, the way it's going with the one-to-one, eventually every kid is going to have a computer. And I have not seen, like my daughter's going to be in 8th grade next year, so I guess I'll see it. But so if somebody has a laptop and they break it, they bring it back, they get another one. There's no accountability. It's just, I don't.
Actually, so I'm not sure who's telling you there's no accountability. Is it that you've if this is something offline, then we might want to talk about that, because that's not what I'm seeing right now. That's definitely not what we're seeing with our principals at all. In fact, our principals make every effort to hold those students accountable for those.
So maybe we need to ask the question though. What happens when a Chromebook gets damaged?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What happens?
Well, it just depends on what the extent of the damage. If this is something that can be fixed or not. I thought she was talking about if something was completely like ruined and
Right, and
Well, but even if it's damaged, I mean, now somebody has to take the time out to fix it. So
Yeah.
now we have
Yeah.
qualified people that they're spending all their time fixing laptops.
No, they're not. I would disagree with that statement.
No, I
That
don't
it's
know.
not.
I mean,
Yeah.
because we're talking about a lot of laptops.
Yeah.
They send them out.
Yeah, for,
If they
so we
need
have a
to,
service
if
agreement
something
with
can be
them.
fixed internally, though, they fix it internally first, and then if they can't, then
Right.
it does get sent out.
Well, does
Exactly.
it make sense? And I don't know the answer to this, and we're not gonna solve it now, I'm just throwing something out there. Does it make sense for us to have a maintenance agreement where it's all sent out? Is it more?
Well, I believe that's what we have in place. Certain things are covered and then certain things are not. If it's malicious damage, then that would become the responsibility of the
Of the
parents.
I think for an upcoming agenda, I know I would appreciate to know the specifics of that. The other thing I want to know about is what happens with these computers over the summertime. If there is a maintenance program that the kids take them home, I just want a better understanding of that because it is such a major investment that we make
Oh,
on these devices. And I think to understand what the level of accountability is, who pays for what, and how they are maintained, what the summer maintenance is like, would be helpful.
I want to go back to Lynn's point for a minute, though. I would say to you that we have not, from our perspective, this has not always been smooth for us. So I'm just going to put that out there. Because we've run up against a lot of, a number of situations, more at the high school, to be honest with you, than the other buildings, where kids are transient or move in or out, and we've been left with broken computers behind and no way of, and I think that we've spent a lot of time trying to track some of that stuff down. It's been very frustrating. So I think the high school would report a bit of a different story than our middle or elementary schools in that area.
But it would be good to see how it breaks down across
Yeah.
the district.
So your point is well taken, is what I'm saying.
So
You're
we're
right.
gonna have a follow-up on this then, and actually,
Well, that's just the laptops, but I mean, as far as the network, I know that you were working with the state to make sure that all the kids could do the MCAS.
Right.
So, is there between the wireless and the hardwired, I mean, is there a plan that, that they're working towards? Because at some point, you're going to be maxed out to a
Yeah.
certain degree, and you have to make sure that you're growing with the system.
No, I believe that we do have a plan in place for that. So we can check on that, but I'm pretty sure that we do. But it's a great question.
adding something on 314 meeting.
Yep.
Okay, I think I have one more for you. I want to talk a little bit, I want to get some input from you folks, a little bit on some of the revenue streams that are drying up, but I also want to talk about school choice and charter school a little bit. So, grants, can you give us an update? I think it's been a month or two since you shared with us some of the mid-year grants this year that we're losing, and some of the grants for FY19 that we already know we're going to be losing. Have you heard any more? Because I think it's important, especially when we get in front of our communities,
Yeah.
to help them understand that part of the reason that this budget number is higher than we're comfortable with is because that money is being pulled back from the federal government and the state government.
There's nothing new that I know of right now from the last time we reported. Is there anything new, Pat, that you know of right now?
Only just the warning that, some of the Title I funding may be reduced.
But nothing concrete on that?
Nothing concrete or major at this point. We do know that some of the community partnership grants, it looks as though, Early Education and Care manages that. That's a subgroup within the state. And they are anxious for a lot of paperwork and a lot of funds to be used now. And we're just anticipating that those funds are going to dry up.
And yet the direction is so counter to the money not being there.
So the community partnership, is this like a shovel-ready type thing that's always been there and it's going away, or?
It's been there for a long time.
As long as I've been here, we've had it.
And we've received some of these?
Mm-hmm.
Every year we do.
Yeah.
It partially funds one of our staff members here.
That's a federal pass through the state process.
Yes.
So the other things I want to touch on are our school choice assessment. We personally, I think we did the right thing by turning the spigot off and stopping the bleeding with taking in more school choice students than we strategically should have. I think at some point soon, we need to start looking strategically at our schools and the class composition, not individual classrooms, but the grade composition. Which, and then I say that, but on the other hand, I know that our towns, we saw that the population was supposed to be remaining flat in Bolton. And while we're seeing a reduction at the high school, I think that may be a bit of a fallacy for a couple of reasons. But I know that in Bolton that there are more move-ins and they're happening. So we need to have a perspective, you know, next year we need to make a decision on how are we going to approach school choice, because we can't stop the kids from leaving and we can't stop the kids from going to charter, so that's something we have to do, is develop a position on that. But the other thing is, you know, for several years now I've asked, and I think we need to really focus on, why are students choicing out and why are students going to charter schools? Because for those of you who don't know, when a student school choices from the Neshoba district to a neighboring district, we send $5,000 along with that student every year. So it's a loss of $5,000. So what, 12 years is $60,000, is that right, Mark? Yeah, so, but conversely, if we have kids come into the district, they bring revenue. Not comfortable opening the floodgates so we can create a new revenue stream that I don't think is reliable. And it's not reasonable, because that kind of flies in the face of what we're supposed to be doing, which is focusing on education for our kids, and where we have spots, fine. But charter school's different. So when children go to a charter school, we the first year I can remember looking at the formula. The first year we get the full reimbursement, and it's the reimbursement for the fully loaded per pupil expenditure of the district, which is, for round numbers, $14,000. Okay, so that's great. First year the state reimburses us the full amount, and then it drops off drastically to the point where we're funding the lion's share of the $14,000 for any student that charters out. So it's not the $5,000, it's a large portion of $14,000. And I want to know, why are they leaving? I've seen some stuff on the MASC listserv. I'm sure you can see yours on yours too, where there are other districts that are now starting to ask those questions. So it's like, now is the time. I want to know why they're leaving. So I'd like to put that on our goals for next year. It's like this silent bleed. You know, it's not like a big, but then when you look at the line item, it's $475,000
That's school choice.
of school choice
That we're paying.
that we're
That's
paying.
choicing out of our district. Yep.
Almost 100 kids.
So
And
it's
your charter number, one second, I'm so sorry. And your charter number is $375,000, so you're looking at $850,000 quietly leaving the district. We need to find out why and what we need to do. Steve, you were going to say something?
I was just saying that was combined for both of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a lot of money.
So those are my hot buttons, but please make a note of that.
Yep,
Okay.
I did.
So,
Thank you.
so you want to find out why they're leaving? And can we do that?
Well, we certainly can't stop them, and we certainly,
Well, that's fine.
yeah, no, and I would anyway, because it is every parent's right to do what they think is best for their child, and I believe that. No, what I want to know is, can we ask them a couple of questions about, you know, we know that your student is choicing out. Can we ask you some questions in a survey, totally anonymous? If they don't want to tell us, they don't have to tell us. But we need to start somewhere.
And could we also, and this doesn't affect us one way or the other, but the homeschoolers, can we ask them also? Only because people are opting out. So why?
Yeah, you could. You could. You certainly could. Yeah.
I think it's a good time to start to ask those questions because there have been significant positive changes in this district. And this was a while ago, but I know that when in the early 2000s, people, when asked, would say they were concerned about school safety. They were concerned, something wanted to go play hockey someplace. I mean, so there are a lot of
And now we have a hockey
reasons.
team.
But now, but I guess that the ones that had instructional concerns, and I think that a lot of the conversations, if people wanted to have a conversation, would be done with the principals, to reacquaint themselves with the schools, the changes in programming. I mean, just the changes in the last 3 years, looking at science and math, and I mean, there's just so many things, but as soon as you're out of the district,
It's hard to come back.
but it's hard to know what's going
hard to
on.
know
in
what's
your
going on,
district.
yeah.
So I think that, whatever we can recoup, but I agree, I think it's a lot of money.
Well, it's a lot of money, and it's maybe, a former former.
Concern, perhaps.
Right.
And, so anyway, I think it's worth pursuing.
So we're gonna put that one on for next year. Did
Yeah.
you write that one down?
I did.
Okay,
She did it twice.
that's good.
Actually, no, but just 2 parts.
Awesome. Okay.
Kind
And
of like an exit interview from a job.
kinda, sorta, yeah,
It is.
in a gentle, kind, and loving way. Yes. Okay. Any other questions on the FY19 budget, friends? Nope. Mark, I see
Actually,
something
on the
coming.
school- On the school choice topic, do you continue to be confident on your projected income on that score in terms of the anticipated number of departing students and the
Right.
population that will still be here?
I have a chart of where I think we're going based on graduation, how many kids we'll lose each year.
That's great.
As which will reduce our revenue.
Yep.
That's great. Thank you. So I'm gonna put that on the calendar too,
For the
right?
7th? Is this all for the 7th?
No, you don't have to do
No,
it.
don't do that one. It
I
has
want
to
to
be the
preserve
7th,
the
but-
7th for the
yeah.
budget,
Okay.
because we'll have
Sure.
everybody here, and it's going to be wild, and you won't be here the 14th, so that's when we need to have our robust discussions. Okay. Thank you all. That was really good discussion. Employee insurance review and a recommendation.
We have been reviewing our employee insurance plan. We've been meeting with the Insurance Advisory Committee. We don't have a recommendation yet, though, from the Insurance Advisory Committee to bring to the school committee. I don't know if you want to know what the process is.
I think that because I would almost imagine that might be the first time that this group has even heard about this or understands the link, and I know that Kevin Cavini's here, and if we've got any tie-ins that we might have to ask him, but I mean, he certainly sits on it as well, Kevin, correct? That particular committee. So I think that it's, I think that people sometimes don't realize the tie-in with the contract. So I think maybe I would start there and just explain this.
The parameters, maybe the process a little bit, and then the status of where we are. In the normal course of business, the insurance company will give us a number and say, this is your increase, for the insurance for next year. This year, we asked if we were hoping that we would be able to do a little better, asked Meyer if they could sharpen their pencil a little bit and offer us some options to do it. So we went to the contract, which is what describes to us how we go about doing this. Article 10 of the contract is about the insurance. It describes an insurance advisory committee. Our insurance advisory committee has 4 members, appointed each by the administration and by the association. And then any other members under 32B, which is the whole OPEB, not relevant to this discussion. The Insurance Advisory Committee uses a consensus model, so that means that the committee needs to come up with something that everyone agrees with. It's not a majority rules model, it's a consensus model. And the changes, any change in the plan, any change in the coverage, or any change in the contribution levels needs to be recommended by that Insurance Advisory Council, which came to their recommendation by consensus. And then it's subject to ratification, both by the association members and by the school committee. The contract then goes on in Article 10 to talk about the timelines for this. The timelines were a little messy this year, but basically in the fall, if there's a written request to look at the insurance, then we meet. By February 1st, the committee makes its first recommendation for a proposal. And then both groups need to look at the proposal and ratify it or not ratify it. If it's not ratified, then it goes back to the Insurance Advisory Committee to look again, and then they've got until April 15th to go to their, to come up with another proposal to bring to their respective members. So that's the process. Basically, the 8 people sit. We've been sitting, in this very room and looking at the various proposals put forth by by Maya, some changes that we could make to the plan. The Insurance Advisory Council, I don't know if you want to know who the members are. It's Pat and I. Okay. So neither group, neither the association or the school committee really can unilaterally change those plans. It's something that's going to come through the committee. Each can come up with a proposal, each person brings it to theirs. So the Maya people came up with a couple of different options for us in this cycle, the status of where we are now, for what they call plan changes. Our rep met with us a couple times and said, these are the things that drive your premium the most. The idea here would be to find something that would save the district money. But remember, the district only pays 70%, not only, but pays 70%, but the 30% is paid by the employees. So anything in this is a very good understanding of that with our committee members. So whatever saves the district money also saves the members' money, because you save the percentage of the 70, we individually save the percentage of the 30. So it's a win-win for everything. And so she came to us and she told us, these are the items in your plan that would generate a big savings. These are the items that you can tweak these some, but it's not going to come up with a lot of savings because they're either not highly utilized or for whatever reason it's not the thing that drives what the percentage of increase is. So she gave us several different options that we've talked about, at that committee, and we've kind of landed on one that we kind of like very well, but it needs to be brought to the group. The Association Executive Board has some questions that we're going to hope to answer for them, so that they can see if it's something that they would like to promote, and then we do the same here. So that's the process, and that's where we are in the process. Questions?
Did we miss the cycle?
Well, technically we'd missed the cycle, but we're doing it anyway. Yeah.
But we can't do anything till the fall?
Oh, no, we can do it. We're going to do it now. Yeah.
So it'll affect the budget?
Yes.
But yes.
I just want to make one comment about the cycle as it's written. It really doesn't make sense for us with those dates, because we don't get our rates normally until our budget is already voted. We push them for our rates earlier. That's the only reason why we even have them right now. And that's why we were pushing to try to get this.
Right.
What is the increase that you planned for in the budget? And I want to know what the increase for the employee health, dental, whatever it is. I'm assuming that the Meyer organization handles all employee insurances.
Mm-hmm.
I need to know what the increase was, the FY 19, 18, and 17, because we can't get away from the fact that insurance rates are going up. They're not coming down. And Meyer is the current provider. No, Meyer is the
Maya. Yeah.
Maya. Oh, Maya.
Massachusetts Interlocal Insurance Association, maybe?
So that's who so we've talked about this. So that's who we've been using. I would like, and I need to understand, so I don't know how much here to say. I need to understand better who the committee is. I don't need the names, that's irrelevant. But the makeup of the committee is folks that are representing the union and folks that are representing the administration. And to me, that sounds like there's not a neutral component in there for someone to be able to evaluate who doesn't have skin in the game. So that's one question I would have. The other thing is, we are talking to the same provider that we've been using. We're not looking at other providers. And we live in an area of the country where there's richness. So I think there would be more opportunity for us to find comparable plans and coverages, and certainly I'm not questioning the 70-30, that's off the table, and that's not even. But I would like for us to broaden the scope, because I think that health insurance it's not like you're locked into one. And I'm a little disappointed that we didn't do that.
So what you're asking for, though, is that, so, because this has huge implications for our unions, so I want to make sure that I'm understanding you correctly, that you're suggesting that we would go out to bid?
Why would maybe I don't understand it, because I don't know why we wouldn't go out to bid. It doesn't mean you're going out to bid to slash and burn something. It means you're going out to bid to see what else is out there, because there's a gentleman who lives in my town who was very helpful with some information, and he was the one that said, sometimes all you need to do is just go tell your current carrier that you're looking, which is what you did, and they'll reduce their increase. They won't drop their rates, but they'll reduce their increase. So, but if they don't know that you're going out to bid, then what's the impetus for them to even sharpen the pencil more? And that's how that party works.
They did.
And yet, we're still talking to the same provider, and I don't know that there's a contractual obligation that we can't look at opening up the discussion. I don't know why. I'm confused. So maybe I need to stop and you and I can talk later on.
I'd like to address the skin in the game part of it, the fact that there's no neutral person. You need to remember that even though, yes, we're all probably participants in the plan, but we do have skin in the game, because whatever the increase is, the district gets is also the increase that we get. And the teachers, with their 2% raise, how much of that gets eaten up. So they do.
No, I understand that. I want to understand the makeup of the committee, because Mr. Hawks doesn't work for the district. So it doesn't matter to, he'd be looking at it, assumedly, more from an outside perspective, objective.
So,
maybe I'm wrong.
Just to clarify, the membership, do you have that part of the contract right there?
I do,
Can you read it?
An insurance advisory committee shall be established by the committee and the association, consisting of 4 members appointed by each party, and any other members is required by Chapter 32B.
And what's 32B?
32B is the, if we voted that part in, that's the OPEB part. It doesn't.
So does that mean you have a retiree?
So it doesn't really play in with what we're doing, because we don't have that.
So the committee is made up of folks in the union and folks in the administration, period, end of story.
4 and 4.
Wow. Okay, well that gives me my answer.
And that, again, that was contractual. That's a piece that's in there.
But that committee did not look outside of the current provider that we've had for years and years and years. That's my only point.
Right, I know.
And I'm coming from the private sector, so blame me for that, because when you look at evaluating the cost of a program, the effectiveness and the value of it to the individuals it's intended for in the benefits world, you go out to bid.
Yeah,
right?
I think though, you have your president of your union here who's hearing this tonight too, so he knows where you stand and we know where you stand, so that's something that we can, that committee can go back and have some further discussion, because that's where it has to generate from, is that committee.
Yeah, I don't know why that would be a bad thing. So.
I have a question. Is the Mass Interlocal Health Insurance Association, it's basically a pass-through and an agent organization to various health plans, right?
I believe it is.
So in a sense, they're a consolidator, and
we have someone in the room that can answer that question. Do you mind answering, Brian?
Sure. I just want to be clarified on that point. The only health insurance provider available through Maya is Blue Cross Blue Shield. So what you just said, Mark, isn't correct in the sense that it doesn't aggregate a bunch of insurance companies together and give you a choice. It's solely Blue Cross Blue Shield.
Thank you.
But it's a pass-through for them.
What it is it's basically a joint purchase of a bunch of municipalities across the state.
Right.
And they are the administrator between Blue Cross and the member entities.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
So like the plan administrator then?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, so they're like the underlying investments in the 401k. Blue Cross is like the underlying investment.
Right,
I'm
yeah.
just trying to relate it. Okay, I'm done. Okay, so that's where my head is at. Anybody else?
So is anything going to happen? Is there a recommendation
Well,
or a request?
I think I'm gonna take it offline with Brooke.
Yeah.
Because,
And we'll have to have a broader discussion on this, because that is a very, I don't know that you've done this in a lot of years, have you? I mean, I guess I probably looked at Kevin or Pat. When was the last time you folks went out to bid?
Been in RFPs quite a few years ago, actually.
so with the landscape changing so quickly and rapidly and all of the regulations changing that are impacting, I think we need to be a little more mindful. I mean, we're looking at the budget. I'm not looking at cutting people's health insurance. I want to make sure that's really clear. I'm looking at what there are valued products out there that are comparable, I'm sure. I don't know what those are. I don't know if it's feasible. I don't know if it's opportunity for us or what, but I think we are not being responsible by not doing that. Steve, you had a question?
Yeah, my question was, the union appoints 4 members of this committee. Who appoints the other 4 members?
Brooke, would you? Is it you?
You?
Yeah, I think we sat down.
Unless they be from the administration.
Well, that's what I was asking for I believe, according to contract, I believe that's what it's saying.
Each party.
And you really don't have any disinterested parties there.
My point.
That's her point.
I know, that's
Yeah.
what I figured.
Okay, I'll follow up with you because I don't know. I'm in uncharted territory, and again, I'm coming from the corporate.
Yeah,
I'm coming
I
from
know.
a private sector, and this is a public sector, and I'm going to chalk it up to that. And I don't want to make you mad, so okay. Moving on. Thank you. Appreciate it. We don't have any new business. Old business. The Neshoba Regional High School statement of interest, and I know you've been working on that. So can you give us an update?
I will actually. So I'm hoping to bring it, right now the plan is to bring it forward to you folks for next week's meeting for the vote and what has to happen and for that to move forward. It's not due until the end of April, but we've been working steadily on it. There's some strange pieces in it there that we have to go after, like we had to go out and count every single window in the high school. There were some things like that we had to go out and do. There are some basic information that we've pulled together, and then there are essays that are being created right now. And so that's where we're finalizing the pieces right now, is on the essay component for the various numbers that we're making application for. In our case, it's number 5 and number 7. So that's where our efforts are going right now. But I said to Lorraine, I just, with everything here with the budget, I didn't feel that I could give it what I felt was enough attention to it to feel comfortable bringing it to you tonight. So very close to being finished.
So when will we be seeing that?
I'm hoping next week.
Next week.
I've got it on the agenda for next
What's the
week.
deadline?
April
End of
1?
April.
Oh, I thought it was April 1.
No, 25th.
So we get a chance to see that before you
Right,
present it?
yeah,
So we
that's
can get
exactly why.
questions? Okay.
That's what she's gonna bring it forward.
So, I mean, you don't,
Well, we get it before, so we have questions for then, because it's going to be large if you're on the windows. I mean, I don't know.
and you know what, that question is about this big, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. We have a lot of those questions, and I know Rob's here, and I know that he's doing some work on that. Pat's done a lot of work on it. We've all had to pull this together. It hasn't been a one-person show. So we'll see when you look at the finished product, if you're comfortable with that, or if you say to me, no, you know what, I want you to go back and do something different with this. So, and I had said that to Chairman Roscoe today too. Take a look at the finished product, and you don't even have to vote on it next week. Like, we'll put it there for a vote in case you want to. But if you look at it and say, you know, I don't know if this is going to really be as competitive as we want it to be, then we want to go back and take another look at it. If you want me to do something different, to rewrite sections or whatever, I really need you to provide some input on that. So you may or may not vote on it next time.
Oh, no, yeah, well, we need everything in the packet
Yeah,
Okay.
before Monday.
it's a pretty lengthy packet.
And I have a general comment that it's known that more than a few school districts engage architectural firms for a $3,000 to $5,000 quick survey and analysis in aid of school districts to both know how to respond best to their statements of interest, because I know it's a competitive environment. There are lots of districts that have buildings in the 50s, 60s, and 70s that are now coming for renewal, you might say. And so we know that we have many districts that are in a similar situation. Some of the consequences of having a walkthrough of that nature is that you get to find out some things you might not know or should be concerned about, both in relation to the statement of interest and also just for our own operational and maintenance effort. So it could be worthwhile to have an introductory conversation with a couple of these firms and have them educate the administration or the school committee on the value for that kind of thing.
So why don't you guys respond to that? Because I have an opinion, but I'm going to wait and hold off on it.
Well, from what I understand, the SOI was, they don't want you to hire an architect, and they actually specifically put it in this format so that you wouldn't have to.
I understand.
And we did it for Center School, and we almost lost because it was not plain. They don't want you to spend money yet. They're
Right,
gonna
but it's a
eliminate
fact
decision.
that many school districts do spend money for particular good reasons, which is that you get professionals who are aware of their buildings and aware of the process and have a few things to say, and there can be value in that.
But I think that the areas that were under obsolete systems or something would.
I'd have to go back and take a look at 5 and 7.
But I'm sure that, if we write a system down, whether it's the boilers, we're probably paying more money to fix a boiler than we are to actually replace the boiler. They would know that better than the architect coming in. Or you could pay him to come in and say, okay, I looked at your paperwork and you're paying more for keeping this boiler going than you would to actually put a new one in. It's, the people running the building know. Because we're going for age, we're going for the systems, and they know how often they're changing windows or, what the heat is, and if the wind, I know that we've got single pane windows at the high school, and you're losing a lot of heat. They know what the heating is. They know that just by looking at, charts that you're going to save a lot of money just by changing out those windows.
I'd like to know when you next speak with the
MSBA?
I'd like to know what her perspective is on that.
I talk to her pretty frequently right now. So.
Because if you could find, because on the one hand, you spend a little to save possibly a lot. I like that idea, but on the other hand, we've got so much information about this high school, probably more than 90% of the districts out there that have gone through this, because we just have analysis paralysis, the living daylights out of that building.
Do we still have the feasibility studies?
We still have the feasibility study from 2008 or something.
And we've been using all of that to help build this.
And we've released 2.
So I respect what you're saying, and I'm not opposed to spending a little to save a lot or get a better product out of it. But I feel like we have so much data and knowledge that we voted this in December. Let's just get the thing done with the information we have, take a look at it, and then see.
I will get a hold of Diane Sullivan. I've been in pretty regular contact with her. She's been awesome to work with. Really, really good.
Okay, because we need to wrap this puppy up. Okay. Litchfield.
So we're waiting on Dave. I know that
Just spoke with him. He's probably pulling in
he's in another district right now with the same issue.
Okay, so why don't we get through the rest of our agenda, and then hopefully he'll be here.
Yep.
Budget and warrant. I know Neil's not here, but Mark or Kathy?
Kathy and I met this morning to review the draft budget that you saw today, and that was the topic of our discussion, just preliminary review and advice towards presentation.
And how does budget and warrant feel about where the budget is?
We didn't actually take a vote, but I like the location of the budget at present. I think a lot of hard work has been done, and I appreciate and praise the administration for doing and conducting that hard work.
Thank you. How do you feel?
About the budget, I'd like to see us get farther away from 4%. Again, if there are any ads at this point, I'd want to see equivalent cuts to keep the bottom line the same.
How do you feel about the budget?
I always like seeing it lower.
We all do, quite frankly.
And I've had questions that, I sent them out, you answered most of it, but I'll forward them over.
I don't like managing to a low number because it bothers me that that I want to see us grow the district. I want to see us push the district forward, and I feel like in the past 2 years, there's been a lot of cleanup and a lot of establishment of processes and putting in safety nets. And I want us to stop managing to the lowest common denominator, and I want us to, next year, what are the exciting new programs to push this district forward? Because we're
I
so
agree.
right there.
And I think that some of the changes that have been made on a number of levels, we're not really recognizing any gains immediately,
Right.
but we will in the future, and I think that is the goal. Now, that being said, there are 3 towns, and, you know, we're here for all of the kids, but we also represent the town. And, you know, I feel like I operate for what is in the best interest of the kids, but I want to make sure that we do everything we need to do and keep the number down. I know it's not easy, and nobody said it was.
Steve.
Well, I like to see the number kept down. However, I think an interesting add to that idea might be those exit interviews we do with the kids who are leaving the district. And that might have an impact on some long-term thinking for the district. You want to see exciting new programs, maybe some of that would come out of a series of meetings or one-on-ones or whatever with the parents of those students who are leaving or contemplating leaving the district. Because if we can keep them in, that can be additional source. Well, theoretically, it would be an additional source of revenue because it's a reduction of money flowing out of the district. So I think those two concepts could tie together very nicely as we move forward.
Okay. Thank you. I think, Rob, I think you're up.
Oh, wait a minute.
What? Oh, sorry, personnel, Rob. Sorry, I got caught up in the budget
Un
stuff.
momento.
Sorry.
All right.
Did you speak about budget though?
I
don't know.
did.
Oh, I'm sorry.
My gosh, now I talk and
I
shouldn't
think he
even
was
listen.
zoned out. Just real quick, personnel, discuss the teacher roundtable, and Brooke is going to meet with Kevin Keaveney and look at dates, perhaps in May, and then we'll send information out. RSVP. We'll basically use the same format that we used in 2016. So there's more information coming. And the other thing we talked about, one of the perennial goals of the PSC is the superintendent's evaluation. And so we have asked Brooke if she could provide members of the committee with her self-evaluation of progress on goals to date, end of March, beginning of April. We will have an evaluation workshop before the April 11th meeting, and last year we did it before the meeting 5 to 6, and I will make sure that Dorothy Presser or somebody from MASC can be there, and that was very helpful last year in helping new folks, and even some of us old folks, understand the process. And I'm going to get up that morning and handcuff Lynn Coletti to me, and she'll be with me all day, and I'll just drag her in here. No, because it was unfortunate she wasn't able to join us, because she had a lot of good questions that I wasn't able to help her with, and we'll see how it goes. So that's all I got.
That's perfect, thank you. Rob?
Sure.
Hi, Rob.
How are you?
How are you?
Good.
Thank you so much for responding to that list of questions from Bolton Advisory. Thank you so much for that.
Well, you're welcome.
It means an awful lot to us, me personally, that you took it and you jumped on it and we were able to get back to them in a timely manner.
That's how we roll.
Don't be surprised if there's follow-up, but I
I'm
really
sure
do
there will be.
appreciate the responsiveness.
I figure if I don't do stuff like that, how can I make my kids do their homework? And
That's
stuff,
right.
Last
Last week we met, Dave, myself, and Pat met with DEP. Dave can kind of go over the notes that we got from that meeting, as far as timelines and some extensions, that they're gonna, grant us as far as the actual construction part, of the leach field itself.
First, I'd just like to thank everybody for accommodating my schedule. I understand that I was supposed to come on earlier, but the flu struck and I'm covering multiple meetings tonight across big parts of the state. So I do appreciate it. Thank you so much for being patient. As Rob had mentioned, we did go into meet with the DEP Worcester on Wednesday last week, and discuss the overall school issues. We actually also met with some of their folks from the water supply group to hopefully give you guys some clarity on some of the questions you raised last time I was here about, are there options on the water supply side and that type of stuff, and then kind of how we go forward. So I thought I'd just start with kind of what the water supply group was, told us, and put that out there for discussion, and then we can kind of talk about the moving forward process. On the water supply side, the way that they're approaching this is that they look at, you have 2 effluent disposal fields that are actually within the zone IWPA's, the protective radii of all 3 wells. And looking at those sites, the water supply group is essentially not confident that you could move those other private wells anywhere else on their property that still wouldn't impact your effluent disposal areas. Essentially, you can't move them off property, so if you're going to try and move them around, just playing with circles on paper, it just doesn't look like the puzzle fits together, essentially. So you could improve the situation somewhat in terms of the travel time, but you're not going to eliminate it.
Plus then, didn't you say the last time that we had the issue with when you start moving somebody else's, it just gets into kind of, we lose control because...
Correct, right.
And then that could really mess up the whole project, and we could be where we are for a long time and racking up all kinds of
fines and penalties. Yeah, no, that did come up during the discussion. They said essentially that from their perspective, they looked at it and said, honestly, the only method they could see water supply wise, the only pathway they could see, which they're not even really sure is a pathway, but would be as if somehow the group, the school, those 2 parties decided to try and pool their resources together and find a single well and become a water supply district. Where you probably put a well on your property, supply water to them, which means that their wells go away, and
So I'm not all for that.
Yeah, well, then we started talking about kind of what would that look like from a technical perspective, and the reality is it would probably mean putting a well somewhere in and around your athletic fields that are there currently, because that's really the only spot on your site you have that would be suitable to put a well of that size, which means you wouldn't be able to use the athletic fields with natural grass. They'd have to be synthetic turf. You can't put
We're not doing
fertilizers.
that again. Are we going to do that again, Lynn? You're going to have a conniption.
So the conversation got complicated very fast, as you can quite imagine. But just to be thorough, we did go through the process of discussing these things to try and get a sense for, what really the options would be. In terms of timing and dollars, it's probably not cost savings if you were to try and take that approach over building a new effluent field. A typical rule of thumb, a new source approval is a year, and $100,000 is a round number. But then you're talking about interconnecting piping across 117, all that other stuff that comes along with it. If you find enough water, that's the other question. You may not even be able to find a well that could provide enough water. If you did find enough water, what's the quality? It may require treatment. So you just start adding up all these different possibilities and scenarios that come with that. And I think that, when I was here last time, we did kind of touch upon that. But this hopefully gives you more specific information to kind of understand the complexity of that problem and really why it wasn't something that was given a lot of really serious, hard conversation at the beginning, because these are the types of things that the state is looking at relative to water supply. So, they really feel like, for their approach that, you know, dealing with the wastewater side of things is much more preferable. To that end, they are very understanding of the district's, you know, position in terms of, you know, schedules, timing, and, you know, finances and so on and so forth. And, you know, in talking with them, it really did sound like they'd be very open to, if the district was willing to put a proposed plan together to them in writing, what they would do is they would take that information, take a schedule that you put together that was reasonable, and then memorialize that in the document with them that basically then supersedes your permit conditions. It basically says, we're going to take the conditions that are in your permit and we're going to put them aside temporarily because we're going to put a consent order together that says the school district's going to do this, and if the school district does this according to these timelines and the schedule, there will be no violations of their permit because this additional document's going to supersede that.
You know, I want to say thank you so much, and yet, and so I thank you, and yet, we talk about the bigger state level entity, and I want to say, it's an unfunded mandate. Seriously? I'm thanking
Absolutely.
you. Seriously?
Right. No, I gotcha. And it's funny because, you know, I don't know if you guys caught that when we were there, but Muriel Stone did kind of, you know, she said, listen, we understand that this is a change that was brought about by our change of regulations.
And she
we're willing
didn't
to
say
work with you.
unfunded mandate?
She didn't use those words.
Okay.
No. So,
All
I mean,
right.
but they, you know, they do acknowledge that this is a burden that's being placed on permittees that wasn't there previously and wasn't a, you know, foreseen condition. It's not like, you know, when they issued your permit initially that they said, oh, by the way, in year 15, this is going to change, so plan accordingly. It was just kind of, you know.
I think I'm just going to echo the frustration that Chairman Ramasco. I mean, I get that, and again, and nothing to do with you. And I think you all did an amazing job going and dealing with DEP. So I'm very, very grateful. But it is just so frustrating because they're not having to come up with this money. We are,
Right.
and it
And
just,
there's no recourse at all? Is anybody, anywhere, in any municipality facing a similar situation, discussing anything? I'll call them, just tell me who they are. Because there's gotta be a response.
Westford Academy is actually doing this right now for their high school. They're upgrading there. And when we were here last, you guys asked, and I couldn't remember what it was, but Westford, their high school, their discharge is in a zone 2, and they're putting in additional
So they're
treatment.
moving forward with the work.
Yeah, they're actually, right, they're in process of actually
Okay.
bidding changes to the plan to meet that, because they can't go with their leaching, they don't have the option, so yeah, they're in the same boat, and they're further along than the district, obviously, but.
And I don't feel comfortable with a regulatory thing that we're not, you know, that makes me uncomfortable. But, Mark, say something. Say
No, just you're acknowledging that the state is above everything, I guess.
So what's the timeline for this thing?
So,
When do they want something?
yeah, what they said was that what they would like to get is some clarity from the district on what direction you're interested in pursuing.
What are they calling clarity?
You know, like a letter, some sort of written thing saying this is what we're going to do to address our pending September 1 permit change, whether it be modification to plant, new leaching, and here's a schedule we would like to implement it. And, you know, we talked about having engineering done in calendar year
Right.
2018, construction done summer of 2019. So that basically buys it, you know, gets an entire year. So you're not looking at coming up with construction dollar funding.
Well, the concern I have is that if the SOI goes through and it changes based on what happens, because I don't want the leaching field to dictate what we end up doing. I don't want the leaching field to drive
Right.
this project.
we've already brought this up with MSBA as well, so they're well aware of our
Yeah, but it's
situation.
MSBA. What about the DEP? I mean,
No, they're also aware. We've been very open.
Modified, so
Oh,
it's
yeah,
not like
we've
we're
been
tied
open.
to whatever we. So
In
if
terms
we
of-
write our timeline out and then we say, okay, per something, you know, so if something happens, we don't have, you know, our timeline changes.
Yeah, so they, you know, we did explain the whole, you know, possible school expansion to them that was brought up by your staff and, you know, articulated very clearly, and they were understanding of that, and they did say, you know, our goal with this is to achieve compliance within reason. So if there are changes that happen along the way, as long as, you know, the district is progressing towards that goal, working in good faith to maintain progress, you know, but if something fundamentally changes, they'd be more than happy to sit down and discuss it and modify timing as necessary. For example, if you're going to get funds from somewhere else for school and it means you need to change some plans on, you know, what you're doing for your changes, yeah, they're going to sit down and talk about those things, and they do understand that. So it's not like they're just saying the deadline's the deadline. You know, there was no sense of that at all. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ron, but you know, they were very understanding of that.
So what is your scope exactly?
And so what I've done based upon our last meeting was you would ask for some clarity on like the upfront cost. So we provided Rob with a detailed proposal of scope and fee to permit, design and permit a relocation of the effluent disposal field. So that's kind of like the first step in this whole process, and that's the work we were talking about with the state of, you know, kind of happening in this calendar year.
So would you coordinate with the building inspector and the gas company and all that stuff to make sure that we can do all this stuff?
Yeah, that's actually already started. Rob and I have been trying to work with the gas company on the process, the means, the methods, and the feasibility of crossing that gas main. So that's obviously a critical component to this for obvious reasons. I mean, no matter what you do, that's going to have an impact. So it doesn't appear from what we've seen that you're precluded from crossing that. It's just more about how you approach it and what their requirements are.
Yep.
So.
And so if we actually end up doing this, all that work would happen over the summertime, it'd be done before the kids went back to school?
Of 2019. So not this summer.
Right.
Next
Next summer,
right.
but that would
Right.
be
The
fiscal
construction would be-
20 year.
Right. The construction would happen during that time period.
So it sounds like you guys have been really thorough. And thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, no, I think that, you know, we went in with a plan and basically laid it out for them, and we were, you know, we were very confident that you know, they need to understand what we're trying to achieve, and that there's real world implications on your end that, you know, have to be considered. So they were very understanding of that, and they, you know, they wanted. It was nice for it was nice of them to say. They said, well, you tell us what you want from a schedule instead of us telling you what we think your schedule should be, right? We honestly we tried 5 years, 2 years ago, and they did say no to that.
You didn't have me with you. What do you need from us?
Consensus on direction. So if the board is inclined to say, okay, we're just going to move forward with trying to find new leaching, that's the first step. Agreeing that that's the approach you want to take, and then, you know, at that point, you know, I think, you know, we can work with your staff on putting together a schedule that really gives plenty of time to get things done in an orderly manner, but doesn't rush everybody. You know, so that we have the right system designed, permitted, and ready to go, so that you can fund it when you need to. You have what you need to understand to fund it when you need to, and then construct it when you need to. So there's going to be some, you know, we have to understand really what your schedule is in terms of how you do your budget stuff for the fiscal year you're going to do the construction, which I guess would be like 20. Is that, yeah, FY20.
Yeah.
So you know when, so that will be part of the discussion on when those markers have to, you know, happen in terms of, you know, when you need to get construction prices and that type of stuff. But the first step is really getting the state something, asking them to.
It's the plan. Here's our recommended approach.
Right,
We're
and
going to
what
commit to an engineering study FY19, and the construction
Right.
FY20.
And what they'll do is they'll take that information and then they'll put it together into what they call an administrative consent order, which is essentially it's a legal document memorializing, you said you're going to do this, we agree with your time frame to do this, and
Do we have to sign it?
it will need to be signed.
Can you call Mike and let him know we're going to need him to look something up?
You have to sign it.
Not unless Mike tells me to. No,
And to
we'll
your
run all
point,
fast
in the
like
consent orders, there's always language that says, you know, that you
Contingencies.
have, right, if there are conditions that change, you have the ability to come back and talk to us about making modifications to this.
Go ahead, wait a second, let Steve just.
Working under the thought that there's no such thing as a stupid question, I will ask, can the construction be broken down into 2 phases so that it's spread over 2 budget years?
But then you're not done, you have like a half a leach field.
But that's what I'm asking, because then you could budget it over. In other words, rather than being hit in fiscal year 20 with $250,000, you do fiscal year 20 with 125 and fiscal
21.
year 21, 125.
Well, actually, we had talked about that, to be honest with you. At one point in time, we'd had that internal discussion if that was something that was feasible. So some of the work was done in the month of June and some of the work was done in the month of July. Like, we honestly have gone down this pathway of thinking, but then that puts it out that much further.
Well, I don't know, do we have to do demolition of that whole area? I mean, would we have to take it all, the old leaching field out?
Nope, that can stay.
That can stay?
So you may be able to do something like, for example, you do all the force main, or maybe you put the leach field in by itself in like June. You close off that back corner of the athletic fields at that point, right? And then in July you do all the force main work and your pump modifications in the plant, and you do it as two separate things. So I mean, you could probably work it to save some money.
Straddle it.
Yeah, we're also into 1920 now, so that's, in other words, if we put in the engineering in fiscal year 19, which we have,
Right.
now we're talking about telling them at the end of fiscal year 20, we would do this, and then in fiscal...
That I can see.
From our point of view. So, but we're really, it's a possibility.
I can see that, because I'm thinking the full calendar year, yeah.
Yeah, it's not.
Yeah.
Because it's really just 1 month.
I can see that.
Right.
Do you think the DEP is willing to extend it that long,
It's only a
the
month.
process?
No, yeah, so I mean, what they're working more on the concept that whatever changes you need to make really need to be done in the summer. So you're going to essentially have to be finished one way or the other, just from a school impact perspective. So I'm not, I don't think that they would say, well, there's no reason you can't go into October of the calendar year 2019, but it doesn't really do any good to
But
to
straddling
do that.
2 years, that would mean we would put half the construction cost once again in
Right.
fiscal year 19. Think about it.
No,
Yeah.
no, because fiscal years ends July 30th.
Yes. So if you
June
put,
30th.
but
I mean,
but
June
it's-
30th.
but we're talking about,
I don't know why, we don't need to solve for that. I like your idea, but I don't think we need to solve for it right now, but I don't think we should lose that thread. And I don't think you, poor man, are gonna be able to answer that for us, but I think it's something we should probably look in.
Yeah, I think if you're creative, you can you can probably just spread it out over a couple of fiscal years. The questions are which 2 years and that type of stuff. So I don't see that
All right.
being.
I think we've been assuming June of, summer of 19, and this concept is actually the summer of 20.
right.
Mhm, That's a year later.
And that's why I was wondering, do you think the DEP is willing to wait yet a whole nother year?
I don't know, they've given us so much,
Yeah, I can see them not, looking to put it off. So if you did engineering in this calendar year, and then said, well, can we wait 2 summers to construct it? The question's going to
The
be
calendar
why.
year and the fiscal year.
I don't know that we need to solve for anything other
No.
than moving forward with the engineering study. I like this idea, but we can't solve for that right now because there are unknowns that we can't answer and you can't predict either. So I would say unless there are other burning issues, Lynn.
Can we use the area above the leaching field as a field?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else? Steve, Kathy? Thank you
You're welcome.
for coming again.
I appreciate the time. So I think that, from your perspective, did we get a copy of the, I think they emailed.
He sent me a sample
Okay.
of
A
the
typical consent order.
Right.
okay.
of the-
So
right,
yeah,
the
so I
school
mean,
district.
the reason the consent order, it's important for 2 reasons. It's not just for the state to be able to hold your feet to the fire. It actually does give them a legal mechanism to ignore your permit violations, which will start on September 1 of calendar year 2018, right? So that document actually is going to be important to the district to give you,
They
the
granted-
legal mechanism to understand that you're not meeting the permit limits, because you won't be. And that, without having to do all sorts of additional testing and everything. So you don't want that. So I think that's why, looking at that consent order and making sure that districts are comfortable entering into an agreement with the state on that level, that's kind of the first hurdle. And then the second thing is just developing a scope and a schedule that you can attach to that as the plan.
So I'm assuming because this is a legal document, you're gonna need the school committee's approval, but I would ask that you could create something and bring it to us versus us saying, yeah, go ahead and do it, and then sight unseen, we're done. Could you do that?
Yes.
What we would actually ask them to do is we'd go back to the state, you know, if the committee is willing to start that process, you know, even if it's just a simple letter saying, you know, we'd like to start a consent order with the state, they'll generate it. They'll do all the work. Their legal department does everything. They'll send it to you for a review.
Because I trust them so much.
Well,
I'm sorry.
I think it's more that they want to have control of the
Mad that they're
process.
stealing my grants, but yeah.
So do you want them to have control of the process?
That's the way it works.
Oh, they're gonna do it anyways?
Yeah, they're gonna do it.
It's like MSBA then.
Yeah.
So basically, all you need from us is to say, you know, go ahead and tell them that we're willing to play ball.
Correct. And then that process will start, and, you know, it'll take some time to go back and forth with the conditions. But while they're generating, we can be working with, you know, these guys on schedule and
Okay.
that type of stuff so that it can move
So
forward.
what I'm thinking you want something from me and us. What do you need?
And, you know,
At this
it's a
point, you're good
it's
to
a
go.
mechanism. I don't know if it's the, you know,
Yeah.
the board, if it's, you know, I don't know who makes those type of decisions.
I think
but-
you have a
Yeah.
consensus here.
Whoever
I think
has
so
to-
too. So I think we should start the paperwork, we should run it through our legal counsel, then we'll bring it back to the board.
Please.
So I don't think that we need a decision
Okay,
tonight.
perfect. Yeah.
Who's our-
But I think we're all in sync here.
Who is currently our point person for the DEP?
Rob,
The engineer? Rob?
Rob and his
Yeah,
guy.
we've been kind of running. It's like,
All right.
I was going to say, Bonnie and Clyde.
Rob
It's
and
Calvin and
Hobbes.
Hobbes. I want to be Hobbes.
Oh, God. Okay, so anyway, you can go home now.
Excellent. Thank you so much
Thank
for your
you for
time. It's good
coming,
to see you
Rob.
all.
Thank you for the
Thank
work.
you.
Appreciate it. You can go home too. And we're almost there. All right, thanks,
Thank you,
folks.
gentlemen.
We, folks, are winding it down. I'll have you know, it's 8:30. Correspondence, I got a couple of things, but I think y'all have seen what I got. And unless there's anything else pressing on correspondence, I had a couple phone calls from a couple folks in my town about the budget, but that wasn't, they weren't upset, they just wanted to clarify a couple of things. I have to say that this year is a little bit different because I think there's more understanding in the community from a little broader population, which is a good thing. So with that, unless there's something else you want to share, consent agenda we'll assume is good to go for meeting minutes of February 14th, 2018, and the warrant of March 2nd, which we'll sign of 2018. For next meeting, we are going to be talking about OPEB next steps and funding.
In terms of the 50, is that what you're?
Yeah, well,
What part of OPEB?
I just threw in the funding because I want to put the funding in there because we have to talk about it. But we had OPEB next steps on there, but we really need to talk about the funding.
Okay, so I just want, just so I have clear direction of what you're looking for from
Well,
us.
this is really from the school committee to decide what are we
Oh,
going to
okay.
do with,
Okay.
Isn't that a
with
recommendation?
setting up
So that's budget and warrant.
warrant, right.
Okay.
That
the
might
state-
be a little soon to, I don't know if we'll have much more to say as Budget and Warrant Committee, if you want any advice or thoughts in
But-
just 1 week.
But that's something that we
But we're
pushed
meeting
down
next Wednesday.
to March.
So
Right.
if we want to have the discussion and make a recommendation, that's,
So you put it on, and if we have news, great. If
You
we
gotta
don't-
do it. You gotta get her done. And the stabilization fund follow-up, that's definitely on there, right? We've got a couple of presentations and recognitions. And Melanson Heath is coming back for our annual, how did we do? So I'm excited about that. The forensic auditor's coming in to tell us how we're doing, so that's good news. And is there anything else? I'm gonna add to the agenda, but not, probably in April, once we're away from the budget, discussion about the Chromebooks and the levels of accountability and maintenance schedules and things like that. Anything else that's pressing, because obviously the lion's share of the discussion is gonna be the budget next week. And we'll have a full house. Anything? Nothing?
Will it be voting next week?
If you want to, we can. If everybody feels that they are where they are, where they want to be, we can. And otherwise, I'll take a motion to adjourn if somebody would be so kind. Lynn, why don't you do it?
I move we adjourn.
Thank you, Mark. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Steve. All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.